After flying multiple rescue missions through the night, the crew finally returns to base. They're exhausted, and they're carrying the weight of a patient they had fought desperately to save in the back of the helicopter just hours earlier. But there isn't time to dwell on that right now. Another distress call has come in. A vessel taking on water in freezing conditions near Lake Pontchartrain, Louisiana. When the crew arrives on scene, they find a boat partially submerged. 3 survivors are huddled together on deck, soaked by sea spray, hypothermic, and running out of time. Now, despite everything that had happened earlier that night, the crew has to do what rescue crews always do: reset, refocus, and launch back into the darkness. Welcome to the Real ResQ Podcast. We've got real voices, real stories, and real rescues from those called to step forward on someone else's worst day. A special thank you to our sponsors to help make this episode possible. Breeze Eastern, the world's only dedicated helicopter hoist and winch provider. Go to breeze-eastern.com and find out what their strength through innovation really is. Ready Bar. Other bars are just snacks. Not this one. This is a real meal wherever you go. To learn more, go to getreadybar.com. And when you check out, add the promo code RESQ10 for 10% off. I'd also love for you to head over to therealresq.com and check out the growing list of partners offering exclusive deals specific for the Real ResQ audience. Save some money while supporting the companies that support our community. Okay, before we get into our next guest, I want to provide a little context for this episode. At the time of this recording, our next guest was actively running for Florida's 14th Congressional District. As you'll hear throughout the conversation, that campaign was an important chapter in his life and part of what he focused on at the time. Since this recording, however, he has made a difficult decision to suspend his campaign. This was not an easy decision for him. He entered the race because he believes deeply in public service, conservative principles, and the importance of strong leadership within the community. While the campaign may have ended, his commitment to service has not. He remains grateful for the support, encouragement, and friendships built along the way. And he has made it clear that he is not closing the door on future opportunities to serve his community and our great United States of America. So not only will you get to hear from a man who is preparing to run for Congress, you'll also hear incredible stories and experiences that shaped him throughout a lifetime in service in both the United States Army and the United States Coast Guard. Now let me introduce our next guest. He's a man whose 3 cornerstones are God, family, and country. He's a guy who would put an American flag on just about everything he owns if he could. And he still jokes that he's ready to storm the beach. He just needs a minute to find his reading glasses and get back from physical therapy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Mr. Shay Williams. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Real ResQ Podcast. I have a great guest with us today. His name, Mr. Shay Williams. He was a pilot in the United States Army. He was a pilot in the United States Coast Guard. He's currently running for the United States Congress, Florida 14th Congressional District. Man, this is awesome. Shay, welcome to the show, dude.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here, Quinny. Appreciate you having me.
Heck yeah. And this is really cool for me because not only, actually, I think you're my first guy I've ever had on that's going to be running for Congress. So I'm really excited about that. So congratulations. And I truly wish you the best. Vote for Shay. Let's go.
There we go. I appreciate that. It's definitely a long row of service. Absolutely correct. I started out in the Army, moved over to the Coast Guard. To beat being a Coast Guard aviator, you have to shoot pretty high. So running for Congress was the next step after flying for the Coast Guard, and it's definitely a learning curve for sure.
Man, that's super cool. We need some coasties in there, like, to represent. Like, what we deal with and what we do, we're great people to go in there for Congress. I'm going to throw that out there.
We are absolutely great people for Congress. The American public relies on us to this day. We have air stations and boat stations around the country right now with crews standing by ready to launch 24/7, pulling duty, serving the community, large and small. And we make good leaders, nice conservative, common sense leaders in our communities. Absolutely.
Well, and we understand, like, the general public as well, because it's the people that we're going to help is like recreation boaters. They're fishermen. They're the people that, like, rely on the Coast Guard when things go south and it's a hurricane coming into town, bad waves, big storm, boat like has a leak, a bad leak. You hit something in the ocean and they're like, Mayday, 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 I'm going in. And it's without question, we're launching. So,
and the best part about that is that we don't know who you are when we launch. We don't know your background. We just know that you are an American citizen and that you need help, and we're coming. And that truly is the best part. We don't know anything about who we're rescuing. It's about so others may live without knowing your politics, without knowing who you are. We're coming. So
it's awesome.
Politics is kind of the same way. You're just out here to protect and serve and take care of the general public.
It's beautiful. I love it. I'm excited. I really am excited for you. I hope this really goes well for you. But let me highlight you a little bit more. 29.9 years of military service. I love that, by the way. You've earned yourself a rack of ribbons and awards and been recognized in both the Army and the Coast Guard. And just to kind of hit on a couple of them, you've got some humanitarian awards. You've got an Army achievement, Army commendations, some unit citations, letter of commendations, Coast Guard commendations, Coast Guard achievement medals, Coast Guard commendation medals, meritorious service medals, defense meritorious service medals, and to finish it off, a distinguished flying cross. What a career. Well done, sir.
It was definitely a career. Some of those were hard-earned. Some of those were not so hard-earned, but absolutely, if you do 29.9 years in the military, you're definitely going to get a rack of ribbons, especially if you're flying search and rescue and law enforcement hurricane response missions.
Totally. Is there a reason you didn't make .1, go one more month just to hit 30?
It was time to go. So they always say, when it's time to go, and 29.9. So I missed 30 years by 1 month, and I was okay with it. It was time for the retirement, and but it's hard saying 30 years, but then it's hard saying 29 years, but it's 29.9. It's even harder to say that. So I'm just gonna roll with 30 years. There was at least 3 months before I went into the Army that I thought I was Army. So I joined in 1994, so 94 to 2024. So 25 to 55, the service, the military got some of my best years.
That's fantastic. Well, let me back up a little bit, and can you give us a little background about just who you are, where you're from, and kind of what brought you into the Army?
My grandfather fought in World War II and in Korea. He was in the Army. He made 05. So I grew up with a strong military background. My dad flew jets in the Air Force, so I grew up on Air Force bases, and I was a military brat, an Air Force brat, moving around. And I feel very fortunate. I always knew what I wanted to do, which was fly. I always knew that I wanted to be a pilot. And that kind of, once you know what you want to do, the rest is really kind of easy. tracking that way. So I remember doing my homework under the flight line, watching Air Force aircraft land all day, and just, being motivated to do your homework by aircraft. And we lived Warner Robins, Georgia. We lived on the Air Force base there. And I was a janitor at the officers club just so I could be around pilots. Just so I could, yes, absolutely. So I think my first job, my mom took me over to the officers club and said, at 15 and a half, and said, he's yours. And back then it kind of worked that way. And they said, well, we could use a janitor. So I started out at the very bottom, but it was amazing. I had keys to the whole building, and they trusted me. And every Sunday, all the pilots would come in and for Air Force brunch on Sunday, and I'd get to talk to all the pilots. It was pretty fantastic times.
That's really cool. What an opportunity.
I don't think I've ever told that story, but that is absolutely true. It was the 80s. It was a wonderful time. And then after that, I worked as a lifeguard at that officers club, moved from janitor to officer, and it was, again, just to be around the pilot environment. It was pretty amazing. And
that's really cool.
Not only the pilot environment of then, but there were so many retirees. On a Sunday, I talked to a guy that, flew during Pearl Harbor, just amazing stories. And I would just take it all in about flying and the stories. And I read books. I read books about flying, mostly about Vietnam at the time. This is 85, 86. And I would just consume all these stories, and many of them were Army helicopter pilots in Vietnam. There were a couple, Chicken Hawk and CW2, some big books that you just read about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And and I was around, and we lived on base, and so there were pilots all around us, and it was just an amazing time. One of my biggest mentors, a gentleman named Mr. Veve. My father is probably my father and my mother are my biggest mentors, and they're still a part of my life every day. My dad was a pilot. My mom was a teacher and then a principal, but we lived across the street from a Puerto Rican family, Mr. Veve. He flew KC-135s, and I would just listen to him talk about aviation. It was always with his hands. And his love for flying, it was contagious, and it affected everybody, and it certainly affected me.
That's awesome. When you were a janitor, did any of those guys pick on you at all, or do you have to give them a little one too? Be like, hey, don't be messing up my floor right now, man. What's wrong with you?
No, I mean, I was 15, and I had keys to the officers club, and you could so there was a bar. A bar straight out of a Top Gun movie with old photos on the walls. And it was just, aviation at its purest sense. And I loved it. I loved just I didn't care that I was a janitor. I just wanted to associate, be around people that were doing extraordinary things. And they were standing duty. They were standing duty, so that I believe at the time there was an F-15 unit there, and they're standing the duty. So they're in uniform and they're ready to go. So at a very early age, there were pilots standing duty.
That's cool. All right, then you went into being a lifeguard. Did you have to save any of them from drowning?
No, didn't save any pilots. But definitely, kind of a start of life of service. You're standing, you're standing a watch, you're looking at the water, you're watching people, and you're ready to go.
It's kind of cool, isn't it? Like, that's how I feel in the helicopter when I'm like, my feet are dangling out and I'm looking around. I'm like, yeah, I'm a lifeguard right now. I'm a helicopter.
At a very different level, but you have to, if you want to be a rescue swimmer, you don't just, and as you don't just wake up one, you got to start somewhere. It's one foot in front of the other. And if being a lifeguard at a local pool is your first spot to getting in the water, you take what you can do.
So you had an opportunity to be a rescue swimmer, but you were a pilot instead. That's all right. Hey, no worries. It's not for everybody.
So I can remember doing, going out and doing static displays. So I flew 65s mainly in the Coast Guard. I did fly MH-65s for about 18 years, and I flew MH-60 Jayhawks for 3 years. But I remember doing static displays, and we'd fly out to a school or we'd fly out somewhere, and we'd set up, and we'd have a little thing. We'd open it all up. We'd turn off all the power. And we'd have a crew there. And I can definitely remember kids coming up, and they'd be like, hey, and I'd be like, hi. And then, they're like, are you the rescue swimmer? I'm like, no, I'm the pilot. And they're like, which one's the rescue swimmer?
I'm so sorry.
And it was fairly normal, you're like, he's over there. Or Sarah Faulkner, she's over there.
Oh, so, yeah. Absolutely.
So definitely I have memories of people at air shows not impressed that I was a pilot at all, wanted me to rescue swimmer.
I still love you, sir. Okay. I appreciate every ride I got from all of you guys. All right. I just want you to know that from the bottom of my heart. I love my pilots.
I think, and I don't think other branches of service, I think it's true in aviation, but there was definitely, the Army was more military than the Coast Guard as far as military bearing and relationships. But in the Coast Guard aviation, while I might be a sir, I might get a couple sirs, most times it was bro hugs and high fives because we relied on each other so much. And, it was a very tight knit group. So I don't think I ever locked anybody up in the Coast Guard, I learned pretty early on that if I wanted flight suits, my flight suit sewn, or something from the swimmer shop, that better be nice.
Show up with a case of beer. Here you go, boys. This is what I need today. Yes, sir. Whatever you need, you got it.
So I over-torqued an aircraft one time doing a maintenance. No, I landed hard doing a maintenance test flight in Miami. And immediately I'm thinking how much beer I'm going to have to go buy at the shopette. And I did. I think I bought like $150 worth of beer and rolled it over to the maintenance shack because it was like, I think it was like the day before Thanksgiving or something. And I knew that people were going to be, and you just like, and forever they would park my helicopter out on spot 6, even though there were no helicopters on spot 1 through 5. I knew I was going to spot 6 forever if I didn't pay up. And I definitely remember buying some beer.
God, I love the camaraderie between inside the Coast Guard and the little things like that nobody really talks about. You're like, oh, that's funny. And yeah, that happens. Screwed up. You're bringing beer.
I spilled some coffee inside an aircraft. As the pilot in command, the write-up on me was terrible. She spilled coffee in the electronics. People were sticking, we'd have little boxes where you put your helmet and all that. I had a little Annie coffee sticker put on the back of my helmet. No coffee allowed in the aircraft.
Gosh, that's fantastic.
I had a swimmer, Noodles, in New Orleans.
Love Noodles, man! I love that guy. He's hilarious.
That guy.
Oh.
He and I had a thing going back and forth. I can remember. So in the MH-65, you got 2 pilots, and the pilot in the right seat hoists, and then the door is right behind us. And I would put my water right here in the door. And one time, Noodle takes my water bottle down to the water as I'm hoisting him and fills it with Lake Pontchartrain water and brings it and puts it back in my door. Somehow has the sense to take my water bottle through this whole evolution, and as you remember, putting a swimmer out the door is a very rhythmic evolution. And he filled it with Lake Pontchartrain water and put it back in. I took a sip, and I can hear him laughing in the back of the air.
Oh, God. That's great.
This is a leather flight jacket right here, a leather flight jacket.
Yep.
He sewed up on this leather flight jacket. He sewed up the sleeves. So when I put my hands in the sleeves, the ends were sewed up. He thought it was so funny. When I put my leather jacket on, and I immediately knew that it was Noodle. I was like, Noodle's dude. But that's how I think I was JG, Lieutenant JG. I can remember Kurt Peterson making fun of a pilot up front while we were flying, and he's like, "I used to fly with your dad, and you're not half the pilot your dad was." It's brutal.
Oh gosh, great. Oh, so much fun. The banter. I remember it so well. Oh, it's so fun. There is a piece of that. You're right though. It's like because your crews are so tight, and like Coast Guard's small in general, but like you go on deployments, which we're going to touch on, and you have just a tight crew. Like you guys are together every day, all day for like weeks. So you learn the intricate details of everybody. It's like being married to each other. It's crazy.
It is. And so I talked about the swimmers, the flight mechs in the back who have to put up with our hoisting. So our bread and butter as Coast Guard aviators is being able to get a helicopter from forward flight to hover flight over water at night and put a swimmer down without hurting, yanking anybody. And the person that I'm working with the most is the flight mech. And if you're not good, the flight mechs would talk bad about you. You're like, the person I'm trying to impress the most is the flight mech, so he doesn't talk bad about me to other flight mechs. And when you get assigned a case or assigned a duty, they're like, oh, not with that pilot, So, I mean, the bar was always very high with the flight mechs. And if you wanted to know how good a pilot you were, you'd go talk to them. And, if you want a 360 on yourself, or the swimmer, but definitely the flight mechs. Yeah. You're just like, hey, am I as good as I think I am? And they're like, no, you're not that good. You're not.
And they're honest too. That's the best part about it. You asked, you opened the door, they're going to be honest.
I don't, in the Coast Guard with enlisted flight mechs, I mean, there wasn't, their feedback on you, wanted or unwanted, is the most valuable information that you can get. The most real. You're exactly right. They are not going to sugarcoat it. And they're like, last Tuesday when we went flying, you were awful. You could not hold a hover. I mean, they just tell you how it is. And we got used to that. And it wasn't ever, mean spirited. But yeah, you definitely have to trust a crew. Your crew has to trust you. And you have to perform to the highest possible level. I mean, there wasn't ever a flight that I didn't prepare for. There wasn't not a single flight was I not studying before, was I not working through it in my mind. There was never a flight where I just showed up.
I love it.
And
I love it.
I don't think there's a Coast Guard aviator out there. There's not a Coast Guard aviator out there that does not doing pre-mission planning, making sure that when they go out, that crew is going to come back safely. So it takes a lot of work, a lot of planning, a lot of training, a lot of check rides. Man, we take check rides, take 4 check rides a year as a MH-65 pilot, day land, night land, day water or night water, and then in the clouds, IFR. So always taking check rides to make sure that you can perform at a high level, make sure your crew is safe.
That's awesome. So I want to back up just a little bit because I want to get back into the Army. So when you joined the Army, you ended up flying like medevac in the Army as well, right?
I did. So my first unit, I went to the 82nd Airborne. It wasn't medevac. It was troops. I flew grunts. I flew troops.
Nice.
And it was very surreal. You're like, I can't believe I'm in the 82nd Airborne. We wore camouflage flight suits and maroon berets. And while we didn't fly medevac, I'm flying 13 troops in the back, that have relied on us to make sure that we take them out at night, low fast, over the trees, and get them where they need to go, where nobody gets hurt. I mean, it was 3 years in the 82nd Airborne. We only flew at night, and we flew multi-ship. We fly 5 ship, 8 ship, 10 ship, 15 ships, aircraft in a row. We would insert troops, and we would move. We would hook up cannons, 105 howitzer cannons underneath the helicopters, and we would move. So the whole idea was artillery would fire, and then we would hook them up and move them so they didn't get blown up by the other artillery. So we were constantly moving artillery in Humvees, and then they'd fire, and then we'd move them, and then we'd move troops, and it was all at night. We were all hovering around each other, like 10 aircraft in a field, all hooking up, and this was my first unit, and it was just an amazing organization full of some of the best pilots and crews the U.S. has to offer.
That's amazing. You know, like thinking about the logistics and the coordination and radio communication between everybody, when you have multiple aircrafts, multiple people moving, gear being sling loaded, oh my gosh.
Our specialty was plus or minus 15 seconds. And that's what we advertised. We'd have little cards, business cards. We advertised plus or minus 15 seconds. So what that would mean, no, I'm sorry, plus or minus 30 seconds, plus or minus 30 seconds, anywhere in the world. So you're a battalion commander, and you want us to insert your troops next Tuesday at 11:45 at night at this location. And this was before, really computers, and we would plan that flight all the way back from the moment of insertion and time it all the way back to like 3 days before, and plan the whole mission so that we would insert your troops next Tuesday at 11:45 at night at that airfield in this country. And that's what we did. It was pretty crazy, and we're still doing it today.
Hey, the operations that the U.S. Army does is incredible to me. I mean, I've listened to the stories of guys going in, specifically on the medevac side, and just oh my gosh, it's incredible. It really is. And I know the Army has a little bit different of a mission than the U.S. Coast Guard, to say the least. But when it comes to the rescue and the medevac side, they do it really well. And it's cool to listen, like the medics in the back, the pilots up front, how they're coming in, grabbing your other wounded soldiers, load and go, and let's get out. It's one like cover fire, you're another one doing like patterns around. It's impressive. So yeah.
So when I left 82nd Airborne at Fort Bragg, the detailer, not the detailer conversations of the Coast Guard where they ask you where you want to go and they're super nice. The Army's like, do you want to go to Korea, instructor pilot school, and Hawaii, or just Hawaii? And I said, just Hawaii. And that was the conversation. It was over. It was a 30-second conversation. And I got to fly medevac in the 68th medevac under the 25th Infantry Division in Hawaii. And we had a deal with the state of Hawaii and the city of Honolulu, and we would fly medevac for them. And we had 86 sites around the island. And when they would call, we would break all rules and just fly as fast as we can to rescue people hurt, car accidents, gunshots, pregnant ladies. And when they figured out that we were free. So we weren't allowed to compete with there were no civilian life flight there. So we took it over, and we would land on the freeway for a motorcycle accident. We would hoist people off the side of a mountain. We would do just about anything they asked us to do.
Wow.
It was
what a trip. I didn't know you guys did that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's called Military Assistance Safety and Traffic. It was a program that the Army was allowed to work for the state of Hawaii, and it was my first real world experience of rescue. So this was the 82nd Airborne and Flying Troops was all training for the most part. I went to Bosnia, but it was mostly training. But But when I flew medevac, this was the first time when you put somebody who's at the worst point in their life, and it's your job and your crew to do everything you can to help them live.
Jeez, do you remember your very first medevac flight? I love asking this question because most of us are like, "Oh yeah, the very first one." Oh, buddy.
Yeah. So I mean, there was one of my very first ones was launching out for a suicide. Someone had tried to kill themselves in the water, and we would just haul out there and land, and they were by a beach, and it was somebody, going through a bad part of their life. Hawaii's, for the people that live there, it's not a vacation, and I remember we brought them in and launched out and took them down to Queens. So yes.
Wow.
But we got called every day.
Really?
We got called every day. I did some, and so not only did we do medevac for civilians, we did medevac for military as well. So if there was a military accident, we did rescues for military as well. There were some pretty brutal ones that I flew there. Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask, are there any that stand out to you that you're willing to talk about?
Yeah, there were two big ones. There was one, I got a call in the middle of the night, and there's a military member that's hurt, and he was Army, and he had blown off his arm with a grenade accidentally, and he died in the aircraft as we flew him to Queens.
Oh, damn. Oh, I'm sorry.
We shut down on the top of Queens Hospital, and the crew's just devastated, just crushed.
Sorry, Shay. Those are definitely the tough ones.
Yeah, you learn about bad cases.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry you had to deal with some of that.
Yeah, some of them stick with you, yeah, definitely some of them stick with you. So it's a good motivator to make you study. It's a good motivator to make sure you're the top of your profession. And the aviation, I loved aviation, but very unforgiving, and you can't go in second, half-assed, ready for duty. You got to be ready for anything that comes your way. So yeah. So medevac, there you go. I'm out of it. Yeah, it takes you right back to it, and just like you said about a crew, I got a pilot right next to me. I can hear him in the back. We're all up on mic. I can hear somebody hurting. You can smell it. You can feel it. It's not impersonal. It's very personal.
Yep.
And so there are, quite a few of those in the Coast Guard as well. And after someone dies in your aircraft, or you nearly die in the aircraft, the whole crew, we're pretty much on first name basis after that,
Yeah, very much so. Because you've just gone through something very emotional, very traumatic. And that's one of the things about what I love with what we do, good, bad, or indifferent. There are things that we see and do that most people will never understand. And I like throughout this podcast, there's a lot of dark humor that comes on here, and people sometimes look at me like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, well, you see, I've seen some things in my career. I'm like, well, if you don't have a way to decompress or talk about it amongst crew and amongst each other, it'll eat you up. So I totally understand that. I'm sorry you had to go through some of that.
No, I think we all, there was a whole crew in that aircraft, and there were multiple other times. It's just in the Coast Guard we have something called SISM, where after a bad case, we would call out another crew member to come talk to them and make that crew sit down and kind of go through what happened, and then kind of evaluate. Was this a big deal? Was it not a big deal? Do some of these people need more mental health? And I'll tell you, I think aviation. When I joined aviation, mental health was kind of not talked about. We kind of ignored it. Kind of drink yourself out of it, or work yourself out of it, or work out of it. But I think as I left the military aviation 30 years later, I think we were a lot better at taking care of being more open about the impacts of someone dying as you're trying to save them.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Even when I got out, so I got out in 2009, and it was getting better and better and better from when I first got in. So yeah, I was very appreciative of all my supervisors that were like, you had a bad case, and like, hey man, you want to sit down and talk about it? Like, you know what? Yeah, I do. So it's a bonus now, like today. And I know it's gotten better since then, because people talk about it a little bit more now than they used to. So
yeah, absolutely. So mental health is something that wasn't talked about when I left, or wasn't talked about when I first joined aviation, but it was definitely, there was a lot more openness to it. And so people could say, hey, I didn't sleep well. Hey, I felt sad about that case. Or, yeah, you could really talk about it more.
Yeah, which is good. Like, I want everybody to be able to do that. And there are a lot of tips and tricks that I've learned, like even just since I've been doing the podcast, about what people can do to help out. We could go down a total rabbit hole with that one. I won't do that, because I don't want to put you on a yellow couch, and I don't want to be on a yellow couch right now.
No. But what I will say, as to leadership in the Coast Guard and leadership in a community, once you've experienced that and you know what that feels like, any military member's death hits you.
For sure.
I mean, you definitely, how much we value our military members' lives it just stays with you. And, for the rest of my career, we just ensured that we took care of our people, And so whether it's on a case or after a case, or now running for Congress, it's about taking care of people and making sure that they're doing all right.
Exactly. I am 100% on board with that. Like, a lot. I share a lot of my own stuff, like you're doing now, with just emotions and how you feel about stuff, because I think it's important to like let people know that it's okay to talk about. So,
and as a commander later, I could see it in other crews, and it was easier for me to see. And I think I could sit and talk with a crew and be like, "Are you okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're good." And I'd be like, "Yeah, I think you are." And then you sit with a crew and you're like, "No, I don't think you're good, man. I think we need to send you over to the doc." I think I mean, it's easier to see when people were truly hurting. So yeah, it's a skill.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about anything else in the Army, or do you want to bring it over to Coast Guard?
The Army was an extraordinary experience. Amazing people that I'm still connected with to this day, that started at the very bottom of aviation, are now at the very top of aviation. It was a great way to start. I would highly recommend Army aviation to anybody that wants to fly helicopters in the most dynamic way. It was truly a great way to start. The Coast Guard would have never taken me without having gotten the skills that the Army gave me. And so that's one of the, the Coast Guard is very selective, very difficult to get into. And as a guy off the street, I didn't have a chance. But fortunately, the Army gave me the skills, and coming to the Coast Guard was one of the best decisions, probably the best decision, one of the best decisions I ever made in my life.
Right on. All right. Well, let's bring you into the Coast Guard then. You go from a U-860 badass aircraft, which I absolutely love, the Black Hawk, And then you get into the 865, the Dolphin, a little less power, a little more whining, but it gets the job done all the time. And I don't know how it does it, but you guys know how to fly that really, really well.
So a Blackhawk is made to military specs. It's a Sikorsky product, and it's made for combat. It's triple, systems. The fuel tanks can take a 50 cal round and self-seal. The titanium head on a Blackhawk is designed to take rounds. And then, yes, I joined the Coast Guard, and they asked me, what do you want to fly? And I went down my list, how about Jayhawks? I flew Blackhawks, and they're like, no, you're not getting that. They were like, where do you want to go? I was like, hey, I'm in Savannah. Can I stay in Savannah? Because Army had PCS'd me to Savannah, and that's where I was when I joined. And they're like, no, I can't stay in Savannah. I'm like, well, what would you like me to fly, and where would you like me to go?
That sounds about right.
And they're like, well, Shay, tell me what you want. And then I told them what I want, and then they're like, that's great. You're going to New Orleans, and you're flying 65s. So the 65 is not a military spec aircraft. It is a commercial corporate helicopter that's been hardened the other way. So it started out as corporate, but what we've done with the MH-65, so I ended up managing that platform for 4 years at headquarters, and every day all I thought about was the 98 Coast Guard MH-65 frames and where are they and what they're doing. And every time I'd see one get hurt, broken, destroyed, it would hurt inside because I know that they're irreplaceable. It truly is a great aircraft. Loved flying it. Loved the crews. Backbone of the Coast Guard. Not a lot of power. Made you a much smoother pilot, or you would over torque pretty easily. And over torquing meant that you pulled too much collective, and you could have damaged the rotor system because you asked for too much power too quickly. And then you've got to turn around. You're done for a training flight, or you're on a real world, and you got to decide whether you're going to continue on, whether the risk values continuing on, or whether you're going to turn around. So you don't want to get an over torque. So I enjoyed flying it. I flew it for 18 years. MH-65 crews, pilots are some of the best in the world.
That's awesome. So when you get to New Orleans, do you by chance remember your first Coast Guard rescue?
So you mentioned awards at the beginning, and I tell this story. So me and another pilot launch out at night. Somebody needs help on an oil rig. I've been there for literally like a month, maybe 6 weeks. So when you come out of the Army, they sent me to the 65 transition course. It's like an 8-week or 12-week course, and I learned how to fly the new helicopter, and then I go to the air station. So I showed up at the air station, and even before you've left ATC Mobile, where they teach you how to fly the Dolphin, you're already on the duty schedule, especially as an ensign, as an 01 or 02. You've already told you, you're already on the duty schedule for every Saturday and every holiday. So
100%.
You're pulling duty. So at the air station, you would pull 5 to 6 B0s, which are you're at the air station and you're launching, and then you'd pull 3, 4 B2s where you're on the backup and you're the second to go crew. And so me and another guy get called out in the middle of the night, and I'll tell you, from the Army to the Coast Guard, very similar in a lot of ways. The biggest difference is over water at night. And so the Army, that's not a skill that you learn in the Army, and that is the skill that you learn. That is the basics of all Coast Guard aviation, is being able to fly over water at night. Super challenging. So me and another pilot launch out. Someone on an oil rig needs some help, and he and I and I got some spatial disorientation. We nearly hit the oil rig.
Holy smoke.
We came back. I think we rescued the person. I don't remember. I think we did. And we landed, and nobody really said anything about this. And we did this rescue, and I felt like we nearly hit the rig. And this would have been 2002, 2003. And we came back, and nobody really said anything about it. And then 3 days later, we went and painted a school, and I got a team commendation for painting the school. And every time I looked at that team commendation, I'm like, no, that was for that case. My first award in the Coast Guard was a team commendation for painting a school like a week after the case, and no one said anything. And that was probably the biggest award. I think, for a while I was like we did something extraordinary, and it was really close. And it was just kind of normal practice. I don't want to say it was normal, but crews were launching out of Air Station New Orleans every night on dark cases, and no one, there were no high. You're just like, this is your job. This is what you do. This is just pulling duty. So I do remember this day.
Dang.
And yeah, it was definitely a new type of flying. And so New Orleans during that time was very heavy SAR. And if you want to feel better about yourself, go help somebody. Even today, if you feel sad, the best remedy is to go help somebody. To go help a veteran, help a guy on the side of the road. So being able to rescue somebody. So most cases, I would say, 90% wouldn't have an impact. And then 5% of, you were probably second on scene and you helped them. But there's 5% of those cases that you saved them. And so I could look at people at the air station, and they'd look like they're, there's a high of rescuing people. And I can remember looking at a friend, and I was like, you had a good case, didn't you? And he'd be like, yeah. It was such an adrenaline rush, such an amazingness. And the aviation that was flown then, the crews, the pilots that I flew with then, did the most remarkable cases that it's hard to imagine. Yeah.
We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors. At Breeze Eastern, they are inspired by the courage of search and rescue teams around the world. Their passion is to support their life-saving missions with advanced technology that delivers unmatched performance, reliability, and efficiency. Because heroes deserve equipment they can trust when lives are on the line. Visit them today at breeze-eastern.com. Well, I'd like to get into another one with you, because you earned yourself 2 awards out of New Orleans, and these 2 specific awards are just ones that got a write-up. And I'd like to read the write-up and then kind of dive deeper into this if you're good with it.
Okay.
So here's what this one says. April 10th, 2005, letter of commendation. I note with pride and am pleased to commend you of your performance of duty while assigned to Coast Guard Air Station New Orleans. Duty co-pilot on 22 December 2004. Demonstrating impressive stamina and noteworthy professionalism, you expertly responded to 5 search and rescue cases throughout the night. Overcoming challenging weather, you and the crew of the 6598 launched to evacuate a diabetic master of the disabled motor vessel Dolphin 3 after the vessel suffered a fire 60 nautical miles south of New Orleans. As a pilot at controls, you skillfully navigated low ceilings, patchy dense fog, and poor visibility. Once on scene, the aircrew spotted the Dolphin 3 with decks awash, rolling in 10-foot seas. The vessel's crew immediately reported the master slipped into a coma. Displaying superlative flying skills, you completed necessary hover checks, assessed the situation, and deployed the rescue swimmer to evaluate the patient. Once 2 flawless hoists were completed, you expertly transported the patient to Lady of Our Seas Hospital in Golden Meadow, Louisiana. Later that evening, your crew was diverted to evacuate 3 crew members off the motor vessel James J. Pereira, which broke loose from its mooring and was in danger of capsizing in Lake Borgnay, Louisiana. Arriving on scene, the crew found the vessel listing and partially submerged. The crew was huddled on deck in 40-degree weather, suffering hypothermia from soaking sea spray. Demonstrating noteworthy technical skills, you deployed the rescue swimmer to the vessel and, when needed, rapidly completed basket retrievals. En route to Air Station New Orleans, you coordinated medical care and safe transfer for 3 hypothermic patients to the awaiting ambulance, resulting in 3 lives saved. You're commended for your outstanding performance of duty. By your meritorious service, you've upheld the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. Hell yeah. Man, that's awesome. So 5 missions in one night? What?
When you read Coast Guard awards, does it say at the bottom of that operational distinguishing device?
Yes, very good. You are hereby authorized to wear the Commandant's Letter of Commendation Ribbon Bar. The operational distinguished service is authorized.
So that's a little O. And for some reason, so I'm not a person that loves awards, but the O, when you look at somebody that had the O's, you knew that was for a real mission. That was for something that happened. That wasn't for 4 years of running a program. That was for saving somebody's life or doing something extraordinary. So that was an extraordinary night of duty. And so this is what Coast Guard men and women are doing today around the country. They are standing to watch. They are standing to watch, and they are ready to go. They are highly skilled and well trained, and they are ready to protect this country or to save lives. And that's what the Coast Guard does. On this particular night, it's another sad story, quite honestly.
Oh, so really? I'm sorry.
That's all right. And so this was a case, where you come on duty, you bring your food, you're going to sleep there in the bunk room, and you have no idea whether you're going to get a full night's sleep or whether you're going to fly. And so I would say this was a fairly normal night in New Orleans during that time that crews were doing these. Again, we're free. And New Orleans there was a lot of search and rescue going on there. There's a lot of different maritime assets out there that could use rescue. So in New Orleans and offshore, there's an entire community offshore. There are 10,000 oil rigs offshore of New Orleans. So there are a lot of people out there. There's a lot of people living out there. So in this particular case, we get launched out, and quite quickly we realized this wasn't going to be a night where you get to sleep all night in a bunk room. It's going to be a full duty night. So, when you pull duty, you get a call and then you get stood down. Then you get a call and you get stood down. Then you get a call and you launch and you come back. On this one, we got a call. The first case, I was sitting in the right seat. I did do the hoist. So this master we brought up, and a friend of ours, Kurt Peterson, was my swimmer that night. And the guy is dead. The guy's dead. But we're not allowed to say he's dead, as you know. So
that's why he was in a coma.
Right. So we're not allowed to pronounce somebody's dead unless it's visibly, unless they're missing unless it's apparent that they are absolutely dead. We have to treat them as if they're alive. So we brought this guy on board. The boat doesn't want a dead body on board. They call us. Maybe there's a sign of life. We hoist them. I hoist them up. I hoisted Kurt down, and I hoist the person up. Then I bring up Kurt. And, there's a lot going on in the back. Me and the other pilot are making sure we don't hit the water. And Kurt's out, and he's giving CPR. And you can hear him, and he is just fighting in the back for this guy's life. And and we're 45 minutes away from the hospital. We're a long time away from the hospital. And Kurt had to give that dead guy CPR for 45 minutes on a flight back, and we're all just listening to it. It's just awful. And we know, I'm like, Kurt, you got to keep going. And and we finally get him to the hospital, and we get him off, and we finally get home. And again, the crew is just, this is not a case that a crew wants to fly. And you're kind of set up for failure. And sometimes this happens to a lot of Coast Guard crews where, a ship has somebody that's deceased or very close, and they call the Coast Guard, and we got to come out and take that person. So this happens all the time. So, So the crew, we shut down, and again, the crew is just kind of broken. We've just gone through this again, and then we get called again. And the pilots are like, are we good to go? Or are we a good team? Is anybody not good to go? It's still the night. We've just gone through this ordeal. This person just expired, or in the back of the aircraft, or was already expired. And I'm worried about Kurt, the swimmer, and a flight mech's in the back, and he's doing everything he can. So then we get another call, and you're like, can we go? And the answer is yes, we're going to go. Is it a real case? Is it a viable case? Are we launching on a real case? Yes, this is a real case. Are there people there? There are people there. Do they need to be rescued? Yes. So we go. And so we fixed the night. We started out with a rough case, and we were given a second case, or it was number 5 case at that point that we had launched out on, but we get out there, and unbelievably, you're right, there's this boat on the side, and there's 3 people. I think there are 3 people that are sitting on top of this boat in the surf at night in the middle of nowhere. And I still have a mental picture, because we're wearing goggles and we've got lights on, and we get Kurt out, and we rescue them. And so we finish out the night with a win, and we turned it into a good case.
Wow. That just goes to show you how you do not a 180, a 360 of from one extreme entirely to the other extreme.
And the whole time we're just, me and the other pilot are just monitoring the crew, making sure we're doing the right thing. The last thing we want to do is, take an undue risk, and we're juggling risk versus gain all the time. And we're there to protect our crew first and rescue second, and then to come away with a win. And I think if you talk to Kurt to this day, I think, he definitely remember that night. And I think every Coast Guard, aviation, and probably boat crew out there has a case night like that, where the cases just keep coming.
Yeah. Wow, Shay. The other thing I'll throw into that is it's very interesting to me, because you hear this all the time. And this is not just with the U.S. Coast Guard and U.S. Coast Guard. This is ambulance crews and firefighter crews and people that are first responders, police officers. You get called to X, whatever that X is. You do whatever you need to do, and you come back. As soon as you drop off the patient or you're done with the call, you do a reset, and you set you're done with that mission. It's now time to go set back up for the next one. It's not like we just go home. We're like, no, you're like, you had a rough case. Now, don't get me wrong. If anybody has a really bad or really hard case, and you got to call full stop, by all means. But when you're asking the crew, hey man, I understand that was tough. Is everybody good? Good. Green light. Are we good? Yep, we're good. Okay. It's reset, restock, locked and loaded. Let's go.
Crews are out there. Coast Guard crews are out there doing this every day. And
every day.
And so, but one of the things about mental health and what we do here is, so I just take that first case where, we do CPR on a guy that's dead for 45 minutes and you put it in a box, and you just have to put it in a box, and you're like, not touching that box. I have to move on to the next case.
Yeah.
Or we go, hey, we've got 2 hours on us. We've got 4 hours we can continue flying. Are we good to go? And we're all dressed up. The aircraft is ready. To bring in another crew is a challenge. And yeah, you reset and you redo this, and you clear your mind, and you put that last case in a box in your soul, and then you rock and roll and you go do it again. And unfortunately, at some point, you've got to let that box open, whether it be the next day or next week or 10 years later, because sometimes, we as first responders, you keep filling that box, and at one point you got to let it open.
Agreed. The other funny part, again, to me personally, because I've had both extremes, right, is the other side of it, where you guys just saved 3 people from a vessel. They're sitting on the top of like basically an upside down vessel, getting slammed with water, hypothermic, 40-degree weather. Man, that is an ultimate adrenaline rush. When you get back and you see the smiles on their faces, everybody says thank you, and they're hugging you and they're crying because their life is saved, and you're like, oh, that was pretty cool. Okay, I'm good again. Let's go. Lock and load that aircraft again. Ready to rock.
There was definitely, there's definitely a high of rescuing people and an adrenaline rush. And, this is what you've trained for. This is what you want to do. And I remember that case I felt was easy, that the rescue of the people on the boat, I think there were like 30, 40 knot winds, but I had good visibility, and I had a good hoist seat, and I had a good pilot and a good crew and a good flight mech and a good swimmer. And I think looking back on that one, that particular rescue wasn't as challenging, but I still have we are low. Like, I am 15 feet over these guys in this weather, and we hoist them up, and and we take them back to the air station. We do photos, at the end with the crew. That's something that Coast Guard crews do, is we take photos with the people that we rescue, and then we never talk to them again. It's like the most. I don't know your names, and my whole crew, our crew, the Coast Guard crew, just went out and risked their lives to save yours, so others may live, and Coast Guard crews are doing that every day. It's an amazing organization.
Oh, Shay, I love these stories. I live vicariously through everybody that shares what they did and how they did it. I can't get enough of this. I really can't. I think it's awesome. I'm gonna ask you, before I get into the next awards here that I've got up in front of me, are there any other ones that stand out to you prior to, I'm gonna call it, Katrina?
No, I think during that time, I remember Coast Guard pilots every year do a week at ATC Mobile, and it's called a proficiency course or a P course, and you get a couple of sim rides and you get a check ride. And I can remember being in a room with a whole bunch of other pilots, and this is probably 2004, and talking about just the amazingness of search and rescue at Air Station New Orleans. And I thought everybody was doing it, and it doesn't happen at all air stations. And I can remember
the rest of us were like months. We're like, all right, can I please get something? Terrible.
I think there was genuine hate in the room from other pilots, and I was like, aren't you doing search and rescue every night? It's amazing. I saved like 12 people last week. They're like, what? So New Orleans during that time was the best first air station that a Coast Guard pilot could go to, Air Station New Orleans. There are a lot of great air stations, but this time in this place, New Orleans was very busy.
Yeah, right on. Okay. It's funny you say that, because I remember, like, when I was in Kodiak, I'd be running a mission at least every other week, if not once a week. And once a week is like, that was kind of normal, right?
But New Orleans has got the river, it's got river boats, it's got the oil rigs offshore, it's got shrimpers, it's got cruise ships, it's got everything. The water is warm. The survivability is a long time. And there are a lot of people making bad decisions in New Orleans, quite honestly. Kodiak, people make good decisions. They know the consequences of them making a mistake in the environment, and they'll die.
Yeah.
So New Orleans, we're going every day, but Kodiak, I mean, and I did some flights up in Kodiak. I was never stationed there. I did a visit there. But those pilots, I mean, people know better than to mess around in Kodiak or you'll die. So I don't know that they fly the same amount of cases, but I know they fly very, very challenging, the most challenging environment to fly in.
It is pretty gnarly up there. But I laugh because I went down to Humboldt Bay, California, and I would go 2 months without having a rescue.
Right.
And I was on duty like every 5 days, 3 to 5 days.
Right.
And you're like, man, we're like in a drought right now. Like, what is going on? Not that I want people to get hurt. I don't. But like, hey, I'm bored. I want to go do something.
I think, again, it's people making better decisions with that super cold water. You know, they're like, I'm not gonna go out in a boat with a half a tank of gas without a shirt on with my cell phone with only 2 bars like they do in New Orleans. You know?
Oh gosh, so funny.
Making bad decisions on the water.
Oh gosh, I love life. This is why I love it so much. It's so fun. All right, well, let me bring you into your biggest award of your career. And again, my congratulations to you. You earned a Distinguished Flying Cross. And here is the write-up. Citation to accompany the award of the Distinguished Flying Cross to Lieutenant Junior Grade Shay R. Williams, United States Coast Guard. Lieutenant Junior Grade Williams is cited for extraordinary achievement while participating on aerial flight from 29 August to 6 September 2005 as aircraft commander aboard Coast Guard 65B helicopters in response to Hurricane Katrina, demonstrating exceptional aeronautical skills and judgment and innovative urban search and rescue techniques for which he was not trained. He saved 91 survivors during 17 sorties, totaling over 30 day and night flight hours. Overcoming the fatigue and stress of the unpredicted week-long rescue operation, he repeatedly and skillfully pushed the power limit of the H-65 to the edge of its performance envelope, close to unlighted hazards, despite continuous reports of violence and gunfire and the consistent threat of mid-air collision in the congested, uncontrolled airspace. Immediately after the storm passage, he made numerous tight confined landings to evacuate stunned survivors. He coordinated the evacuation by tug of a stranded cargo ship, then skillfully completed the vertical surface rescue swimmer delivery to a school roof and hoisted 36 survivors to safety. He landed light on a damaged supermarket roof, rescuing 34 desperate, dehydrated victims. He displayed superlative interagency coordination skills as liaison to Task Force Eagle, coordinating hundreds of rescue missions with the Department of Defense and Coast Guard assets. Immediately after a second 12-hour day as air liaison, he launched on a night rescue mission, systematically hovering through the city within feet of trees and power lines using night vision goggles to search for signs of life. Locating 3 people trapped in floodwaters between the pitched roofs of homes, he adaptively positioned the aircraft in between obstacles and recovered them with 3 flawless hoists. He continued hoisting and saving lives after being warned by authorities about a cloud of toxic hydrogen sulfate in the area. Refusing to abandon the mission, Lieutenant Junior Grade Williams' actions, aeronautical skills, and valor were instrumental in the rescue of 91 victims. His courage, judgment, and devotion to duty are most heartily commended and are in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. Hoorah!
Sure.
Shay, what? So here's my pitch. Ready? I was not at Hurricane Katrina. I was not one of the swimmers that responded. And I'm bummed that I wasn't there and happy I wasn't there at the same time because it was the Super Bowl of SAR. And we had more than half of our swimmers in the U.S. Coast Guard on scene at that time. And I was in Humboldt Bay at the time, and it didn't work out for me to go. We ended up sending one of the other guys. So, but you were there, like stationed there. Holy smoke. I've heard a lot of stories.
Yeah, it was definitely the Super Bowl of SAR. So Coast Guard trains to respond to hurricanes. And the best way we do this is we play chicken with the hurricane. So we were pretty skilled at this in New Orleans. There had been multiple hurricanes that had come through before Katrina. This was a well-oiled machine. It's probably I know it's well-oiled today across the Coast Guard. But we respond to hurricanes. And so you play chicken. You wait and you watch. And then whichever way the storm goes, you go the other way. The storm passes, and then you come in right behind it. And so we had done this quite a few times, and nobody knew that this was going to be what it was. We thought it was just another hurricane because it happened all the time. And so we had 5 helicopters at the time, and my crew was Ole Sabo, Mike Colbath, and Chris Monville was our swimmer. So that was our crew. There were 5 helicopters, and I was super fortunate to be tapped to be one of the crews. And we had a air station of 120 members, 28 officers and pilots. And so we launched out. We were under Captain Bruce Jones at the time, an amazing leader. And we went to Houston. Some people went other places. Katrina passed. And we came in, and I remember coming in. We finally get back into the city. 3 go south, 2 aircraft go north. We come into the city, and we use Channel 16. Channel 16 is a universal frequency of distress, and we start hearing one request for help, and then another. And then another, and the radios, you can't even imagine the amount of people asking for help. And so, yes, it was an amazing air station. So Captain Bruce Jones held the city together for the first 24 hours. It was quite a unique story. So Katrina still concerns me, bothers me to this day. We saw a major metropolitan city go from major metropolitan city to the Wild West in a 24-hour period.
Yeah.
And Coast Guard Air Station New Orleans, the crews that came back in did the most extraordinary things. And so I was part of that. I did some amazing rescues with some amazing crews. So day 1, we come in, we drop off the command, they start setting up the air station. And then we go out. Captain Jones gives direction, and it is go out and do good things, rescue people, back brief me. You know, I'm like a JG. I'm an O2 and an aircraft commander, and they're like go do good things. And we would go out and start doing rescues. And so day 1, we flew like 7.5 hours. We stayed the night. We knew it was a big deal. There wasn't a really, we would hoist people and take them to the airport. New Orleans International was where we started going. We started doing these rescues. Day 2, I'm doing rescues. In day 3, they said, hey, you've flown too much. You need a day off. And I'm like, there are rescues going on. I'm not sure. And they're like, we're going to need you to go to the Superdome. So my ops boss at the time, Captain Scott Kitchen, he's like, Army, there's an Army contingent at the Superdome. There's a shack next to the Superdome, and there's a command center there, and they are managing rescues there as we are managing rescues here. And so on Wednesday of that week, somebody dropped me off at the Superdome. And so my day off was going into the shack and being the Coast Guard rep with the Army and start organizing all our assets with their assets and coordinating all these cases going across the city. So later in the week, E-2 aircraft was up, but for the first couple of days, it was hunt and find, search and rescue, or it was. So what we did at the Superdome there was we took down all the light posts. We had 2 spots. Every helicopter that came in had to bring food and water. There were 22,000 people in the Superdome, and it was a horrible place. No power. There's no power. It's 105 degrees out. And every helicopter that came in had to bring food and water, and every helicopter that left had to take somebody with them. And so we had spray painted frequencies on the deck so anybody could come in and tune us up. And I would run out and hand them on a piece of paper a mission. If they didn't have somebody or something, I would run out and I was like, go here, here's a lat long, go. This is what we know. Yeah, it was crazy. And so,
wow.
So that was Wednesday. And then Thursday, they let me fly again. So I would go fly my 6-7 hours, and then they would drop me off at the Superdome. And I would do the same thing again. And so we just managed. They said I spoke Army, and I did. I was only 2 years out of the Army. So I just understood the Army at this time. And so they dropped me off and just coordinated rescue after rescue. The cases were, it was obviously a very dynamic, very hot, fluid time and just chaos in the region. So that Thursday I flew and then went back to the Superdome. And then on Friday, I don't remember whether I went to the Superdome and flew. I think I would fly and then Superdome. But it was the same thing. On Friday, the Army, big Army had gotten there, the 82nd. General Honore had taken over. He was a 3-star general in the Guard, Louisiana Guard, and I'm a JG and I'm in the shack, and he comes in, he's got an entourage, so I'm an 02 and he is an 07, 8, 9, 010, so 010 to 02. and so what I didn't know was that he had told Captain Bruce Jones that we needed to stop hoisting people off of roofs because there was a backlog of where to take them. So we were taking them to either Moisant to Air State or Moisant to New Orleans International. We were taking a place called Cloverleaf. It was just a field where we would just bring.
I know the Cloverleaf. I had a lot of people talk about it. Like Cloverleaf is ended up being an overpass, yes. On-off exit ramps on the highway, and only like certain ambulances could get there. One of my buddies, one of my best friends, was one of the ambulances that would go to the Cloverleaf to pick them up from the helicopters. Anyway, sorry, I digress. Exciting! So I know some of this stuff.
So 2 stories of Cloverleaf, and I'll go back. So first story of Cloverleaf is I'm in the right seat. We land. We have people in the back. There's a gentleman, and he's on the edge. He's wearing jeans and a red plaid shirt, and I think he dies right here. He was just exhausted. He stood up, and yeah, that's the type of environment that it was. Yes, it was awful. It was an awful place. There's no food. There's no water. There are hungry people. We were coordinating food and water drop off, but it's just it is humans, fighting for survival. Quite honestly.
Yeah.
And so that Friday, so I'm in the shack. And
you told me there were 2 stories at Cloverleaf. That was one. What was the other one? You thought I was going to forget.
So, as a pilot, there are a couple of rules. So we have 2 power control levers that control the engines, and they're on the overhead up at the top. And me and another pilot, we land in Cloverleaf, and I don't know why. We're trying to conserve fuel. It's always about fuel, especially in the 65. It was always about, we had always were low on fuel. We're not a 60, we're always low on fuel. And so we brought a power control lever back to idle, me and this other pilot, and we lock up and we take off, and the low rotor horn starts going beep, 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 beep. And both he and I looked up, and one of the engines was at idle. We had taken off with one at idle.
Holy shit.
And we both slam it up in the flight and come over some wires, pitch the nose up over the wires, and pitch the tail up so they don't hit the wires.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
You got
the
away with that one. Holy cow, Shay. Woo-wee.
So
Dude, I just got chills thinking about that.
So all throughout the week, we would do hoists in the city day and night, and you would rescue someone, and you would pop up, and you'd look around, and there would be 4 helicopters around you that you didn't see, that are, oh, over there, there's somebody doing a rescue, there's somebody doing a rescue, there's somebody doing a rescue. And that we didn't have a midair during that time is only by the grace of God.
100%.
There were so many times that we would pick up and see an aircraft that we had not previously seen. That's the Wild West part of New Orleans. So on Friday, I'm back in the Superdome at the shack next to the Superdome. General Honore comes in and he says, I want to set up a field hospital at the convention center, which was a well-known place for where survivors had gone. And he's a 010 and I'm a 02. And I'm like, hey, sir, we don't want to set up a field hospital at the convention center. We've already rescued all that area and we're pushing west. We want to set up a field hospital at either Cloverleaf or we want to set it up at New Orleans International. And he tore into me. He yelled at me. He's like, I don't want any good ideas. And I told the Coast Guard to stop hoisting 2 hours ago. He yelled at me up and down and then left. And it made the newspaper. There was a reporter in there, and there was an 06 in the Army, and he literally said, son, turn around. And I turned around. He's like, oh, I was just seeing if you had any ass left.
Oh gosh.
So that was the environment. So there were 6,800 hoists done in like a 2-week period, and the flying at night was very challenging. Again, it's hard to imagine flying around a major metropolitan city with no power.
Yeah.
It's like Escape from New York. You know, there's no power and you're hovering around, and so all we would see would be flashlights, and that's how we would find survivors. And so the first couple of nights we started going out, you know, there were a lot of flashlights. You'd see a lot of flashlights. So the water would rise, the people would go into the attics, and then they would get stuck in the attics because the water was to the eaves. And then they would have to cut themselves out. Our swimmers started carrying axes, and some had chainsaws, and when we put them down, they'd have to cut them out of the roofs. Even a year later, 2 years later, there were dead bodies found in roofs of people
Oh
that
my
were trapped
gosh.
up there. So this was a very unique urban rescue, and flying around at night in a major metropolitan city with no lights and your crews cutting in the roofs is kind of hard to visualize.
Yeah. Like I said, I have had a bunch of guys that were there on scene, a lot of the swimmers, and have shared some amazing stories, good and bad, but just the stories that came out of New Orleans are unreal. So but I appreciate you sharing your perspective.
So here's the part on the Distinguished Flying Cross. It was hard. Like, my vision at the end And so it was a huge 3-week ordeal, month ordeal. We stayed and lived on the base. Captain Kitchen and the team had gotten us some campers, and we had tents, and we were all living there. I was living in my office. Power sometimes, power not sometimes. And so this wardroom of people were the most amazing people I've ever flown with. And we had an air station sign, and everybody that flew there from another air station would put their air station on the sign. And by the end, every air station was on there. So every air station, so the Coast Guard was just an amazing organization. And the call went out that we would need help, and they came. And so aircraft from all over the country, Coast Guard aircraft coming in, working together, doing this mission, saving lives, 6,800 hoists. It was everybody did this. This was such a team event, but you don't get awards for team events. And so my vision was, we're all out on the White House lawn getting DFCs. And that's what I saw. And so unfortunately, you have an awards board, and we were living in just an awful place. The city was destroyed. So we had an awards board, and I'll say it, we only got 4 DFCs, and there were other air stations that got more DFCs than ours, and we were there. And so there were a lot of people that did amazing things, that did DFC worthy stuff. So I'm not gonna take away from my award, but what I will say is that I can think of 10 pilots. They want 10 pilots, 28 pilots that deserve DFCs. And at the time, they wanted to give comms, I think, to our swimmers, and we had to fight to get air medals. And so it was just a unique. So you got to take all those things that person did and write them down succinctly and go through this process. And a DFC, I think, has to be signed by the commandant. It's a very high level award, and so it's certainly an admiral level signature. And we just didn't have the capacity to get everybody exactly, and we worked hard, and we did, and people were working on awards to make sure people got what they deserved. It was just a unique time. And so I really wished that we had given everybody DFCs. It would not have taken away from the medal if we'd given it to all our crews. Bar a few, the vast majority did exactly what I did, other than the Superdome stuff, which really changed the flavor of my award. But there was some pretty amazing stuff done by a lot of pilots and a lot of flight mechs and a lot of rescue swimmers. So, and all those swimmers that, went out the door, went down the cable and cut into a roof and got an air medal, God bless them. They did amazing things. So just a unique time, but I wish that we had given DFCs to a lot more people at that unit.
I will say this. I will piggyback off this. And I will say that we don't do this for the awards. You and I actually spoke about this offline before we even started. Like, we don't do this for the awards. We don't do it for the write-ups. The thank you is nice. The awards and recognition is wonderful, but that's not why we do it. We do it because we love this job. And I have a unique spot here because it's the podcast and I get to highlight guys like you that earn this, because everybody that's gone out there has earned what they wear on their chest. Good, bad, or indifferent. Maybe it should have been higher. Maybe it should have been lower. That's subjective, but you know what? You earned something, and I am happy to highlight it. So that's why I do it. And again, my congratulations and hats off for you for flying through Katrina. Well done, sir. I mean, like, just a couple of the pieces in that award are just awesome to me. Like landing on light on wheels on a damaged supermarket roof. What the? Hoisting 36 survivors off a school. Like, wow. Just wow. That is incredible. So well done, sir.
Thank you very much. Again, it was an amazing time, and there were a lot of crews that did a lot of great things. So definitely people flying at their best, people performing at their best, Coast Guard members left and right just doing amazing things. So yes, thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing your perspective of that day or that week, that event.
Yes.
So I appreciate it.
And there was so real quick, and I'll tell you this. I mean, so there was a lot of mental health involved with that event, and so there were people after. So after Katrina, I got assigned to be the medical officer. We had a medical officer. We had a clinic at the air station. I was the medical officer.
Nice.
And we had a lot of people hurting. We had a lot of people that drank too much, got in too many fights, that realized in themselves. So I asked a doctor to come down and evaluate us, and a lady came down. She's now an admiral, but she came down and evaluated the air station, and when you were inside of it, you couldn't tell how messed up everybody was, and when she left, Dana is her name. She's an admiral. She's like, y'all are all messed up. You just
Thank you, ma'am.
It was such a Wild West time. It was, you had just gone through this thing, and there was so much death and destruction in the city, and it had a huge impact. I fell down about a year later. I had moved on to another air station, and I went through a pretty bad period of depression that I had never had before. And I had an exceptional boss that called me in. He's like, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm like, "I'm not doing so good." And he's like, "Can you fly?" And I'm like, "Yes, I can fly." And he grilled me pretty good. And I was like, "Please let me keep flying. I'm good for it." And I had to report to him, I think like every other day. And he's like, "How you doing?" And I'm like, I'm about 80%. And it took some time to overcome everything that was in this box. That I moved to Miami. It was a great air station. They had a mission there, but it was a different environment, and I was allowed to relax, and all of this stuff from Katrina, maybe from the Army, it all came out, and I just went through a rough period, and I had a great command that evaluated me hard, but ultimately helped me through it, and it was some of the finest leadership. Again, you're just taking care of people, making sure they're safe to do their job, but recognizing that it's a tough business.
For sure. Well, I will say that one of the things that I like where I'm at in my life now, and I just in our conversation, it sounds like you can relate to a lot of the same that I'm about to say, is that we have gone through some stuff, and we have figured out how to get through that. And then we've had leaders above us where, again, checking on us, and the things that we're able to get out of that are really good, we are now being able to pass on to everybody else below us and everybody else that hasn't seen this yet. Like that, we know they're going to at one point or another. Not everybody's career is like beautiful and easy. There's some tough times, and we see some really crazy stuff. So knowing that we can now support those that are coming up, I get excited about it. Like, I know what you're going to go through, and I'm ready to help you. It's I was
always as a commander, I was always appreciative that when someone would come talk to me, that they would trust me to tell me what was going on with them, and that I could take care of them back. That was taking care of crew members as in a leadership position. I much prefer to give awards. I much prefer to talk about good about somebody that did something well, and taking care of our people, taking care of people is this kind of ethos in our organization. And it's one of the best parts of the Coast Guard is that we just really take care of our people. We strive to make it a great place and take care of our people.
Yep. And I agree. Dang, Shay. Well, do you want to keep going with New Orleans, or do you want to rotate into Miami?
The last thing about Air Station New Orleans and Katrina, I feel very fortunate that we had such an amazing leadership. Captain Bruce Jones was our CO. He held the city together for the first 24 hours. I don't think he got the credit that he deserved. 275 police officers walked off the force. There was no law enforcement really in the city at the time. We were the only federal organization the first couple of days there. Captain Bruce Jones, Captain Scott Kitchen, and Captain Tim Tobias was our leadership at the time. And the most amazing part about being a military member or a Coast Guard member is that during every case or mission that I flew, that I knew that I had the weight of the Army and specifically of the Coast Guard behind me. I knew that if we got in trouble and went in the water, that they'd launch a fleet. I know that the Coast Guard would send everybody to come get us. And having that behind you is such an amazing feeling. You know that they would come for you no matter what. And so being an American and loving your country and knowing that your team is behind you and coming for you, it gives you a lot of strength.
Yeah, for sure. Man, I like that. That's good stuff. Man, thank you, Shay. That's amazing. It's such a great outlook to it too. Oh, God, I feel all motivated. I'm ready to go right now, Show. You and I need to go get a helicopter. Let's go.
So I stayed in the Coast Guard every day that they let me stay. I stayed until they told me I had to go.
That's awesome.
I love the Coast Guard so much. It's such an amazing organization. The caliber of people that I got to work with, the missions that we did, the taking care of people, every day, people just fighting to do the right thing, fighting to protect and take care of people. You will not find a better organization than the United States Coast Guard. I feel very fortunate to have been a part of it.
You and me both. 100%.
And there were many,
grateful.
And there were many a day after I retired where I was sure that someone was going to call me to come stand duty. That I was needed, even though I was broken and beat. That there was still something out there that they wanted me to do. I mean, if the Coast Guard called me right now and said, "Hey, will you come answer phones?" I'd go.
Yeah. If they called me tomorrow and said, "Hey, we need a swimmer," I got you. I would not hesitate. I'd be like, "I'm in. Let's go."
I don't think I'm good for flying. Flying's really a young person's game, but I would, just to be a part of that organization. If you can ever be a part of the United States, if you can ever be a part of the United States Coast Guard, I highly recommend it.
Me as well. Man, that's good. That's good. All right, Shay, I got to bring you into Miami now. So Miami, you were there for another 4 years, and you, I know you had a couple rescues while you were there, which I would love to hear some of the ones that stand out to you there, but you were also on a deployment that I want to talk about. So you tell me, you want to start with the deployment, or do you want to start with just what you remember from some of your rescues?
I think some of the most notable rescues were on deployment. Go ahead with the deployment.
Yes, sir. In that case, congratulations, you earned yourself an achievement medal. And here is what this write-up says. Citation to accompany the award of the Coast Guard Achievement Medal. Gold star in lieu of second. To Lieutenant Shay R. Williams, United States Coast Guard. Lieutenant Williams is cited for superior performance duty while serving as aircraft commander aboard Coast Guard helicopter 6596 from 11 February 2008 to 10 March 2008. Lieutenant Williams' judgment and aeronautical skills were vital in the prosecution of 5 search and rescue cases, saving 8 lives and assisting 17 others. His expert management of the aviation detachment while aboard the Coast Guard cutter Dependable enabled the crew to provide 97 flight hours of air support, including the medical evacuation of one Coast Guard Cutter Dependable's crew members. His decision to deploy a locator beacon aboard a disabled vessel, Miss Dada, was critical to the Haitian Coast Guard's ability to locate that vessel, render assistance, and tow it safely to port. After locating 2 additional disabled vessels far offshore, he guided the Coast Guard Dependable to the scene where 10 survivors were assisted. Most notably, on a night with no lunar illumination, Lieutenant Williams conducted a medical evacuation of 2 passengers aboard the cruise ship Westerdam, far at sea. After meticulously planning the transit from the cutter to the hoist operations and passenger embarkation, he lifted off from the cutter in heavy weather and transited 110 miles over water to the cruise ship. With a critically low fuel reserve, proximity from multiple obstacles on the bow during the successive 60-foot hoist to safely bring an 88-year-old male with internal bleeding, a 79-year-old female stroke victim, and a nurse aboard the helicopter. While en route to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, the man's heart stopped, leaving the nurse and flight medic to begin resuscitation efforts. Lieutenant Williams' superior skills and decision to divert directly to the U.S. Navy hospital ultimately saved the man's life. Lieutenant Williams' diligence, perseverance, and devotion to duty are most heartily commended and are in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. Dang, Shay. Man, I love this stuff. I really do. The write-ups don't actually do it justice about everything that's going on inside an aircraft, on a boat, on deployment. But man, they are fun to read.
Yes. So I left New Orleans and I wanted to live in Miami, and I got Miami. It was amazing. I'd always wanted to live in Miami. I'd always wanted to fly out of Air Station Miami. I met my wife there. I had my child there. I lived in a condo on the beach, and every morning I'd wake up and look at the ocean.
That sounds terrible.
It was fantastic. Coming from being an Army pilot where you slept in the aircraft, under the aircraft, on top of the aircraft, the Coast Guard was definitely a different style. So, but one of the things about Coast Guard Air Station Miami during those times is you deployed. Now, Coast Guard deployments are a little different than, say Marine Corps deployments. But we did 2 weeks on Coast Guard cutters like every 8 weeks. So there was a full deployment cycle, and coming out of New Orleans, I was ship qualified, but this was a whole new thing. So the Florida Straits are full and active to this day. So Coast Guard stations up and down the Florida coast are out there protecting our coast. And we probably do more search and rescue of people trying to come here, Haitians and Cubans trying to come here than of American citizens. It was so much so that we would get calls, hey, my son left Cuba 5 days ago, have you seen him? So there's a huge humanitarian, we got it all the time. They knew. They would call the air station, my dad, my father, my husband left, have you seen him? And so it's awful out there.
Wow.
The ocean is beautiful, but it is unforgiving for people that are not prepared for a real transit, say from Cuba or Haiti. And so Coast Guard's out there patrolling, and we do a lot of, migrant interdiction and take them back to Cuba or take them back to Haiti. But there's a lot of rescue involved in that. So on this particular deployment, this was a deployment, I went out with another pilot named Josh Wine, and it's 2 weeks. The minute you land on the back of the cutter, 210s, which are tiny, or 270s, which have a galley, it's game on. And you could always tell the minute you landed whether it was a good boat or a bad boat. If the CO and the XO and the ops came down and shook your hand, then you knew it was a good boat. if they just turned and went and nobody came down, you knew you were in for a rough ride on a 210 for 2 weeks. And I'm a lieutenant with a crew, and they all want Coast Guard helicopters on the back of their cutters. It is a force multiplier. It gives them a lot greater capability. So on some of that award, I can tell you that right off the bat, there's nothing darker than over water at night in the middle of the Florida Straits. It is some dark, dark flying. It is dark, 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 dark. You're basically, aircraft are flown either VFR, visual flight rules, where you can see things, or IFR, where you're in the clouds. And this is kind of a combination. There are no clouds, but you can't see a visible horizon because it's so dark. So launching at night, when there's no moon and there's an overcast, is a rough flight. If I could get just 10%, 2% of illumination from the moon, then it's a lot better. So on one of those, I'll tell you, we found a raft, and there were like 8 people on it, and they're on a poorly made raft with a stick with a blanket as a mast and a sail, and they're going nowhere, and they're going to die if we don't. And these are Cubans. And on this particular one, we were asked to continue our patrol, and I said, no, we're staying right here. And I'll tell you, we sat there and circled until the boat showed up. And they're like, no, we got a small boat coming. You guys are good to continue. And I'm like, nope, we're staying right here. We're not leaving. The ocean is amazing. If you take your eyes off a swimmer for 2 seconds, they can disappear. And so when you find somebody, you just don't take your eyes off of them. So that was part of aviation. So we found some people in a raft. They had been out there a long time, and they got a ride back to Cuba, but they were not out at sea, and they did not die. So yes, daily Coast Guard members are rescuing people from other countries trying to get to this country every day. So. Yeah. And then the other case that's mentioned in there is cruise ships. We did a lot of cruise ship rescues.
Some of my favorites.
Oh my goodness, cruise ship rescue.
You're all up to the side. It's like flash photography. You're like, oh, hey.
So we're on the cutter, and we're 80 miles away from this cruise ship, and so there's somebody in their worst day that needs off of this cruise ship. They are 80 miles south of Cuba. Try to mentally picture where that is. So when I talk about when I go out on a case, and if we end up in the water, the Coast Guard's going to come for us, I'm in the farthest edge. There's nobody out there. We are 80 miles south of Cuba, and now we are 80 miles. I think we were like 120 miles from the cutter. We were a good distance. I think we were 100 miles. So we're 100 miles from the cruise ship that is 80 miles south of Cuba. And we're at the very edge. So the air station knows that we're out there alone. They send out a Falcon. The CO at the time came out in a small jet and went to that cruise ship first. And so they're circling overhead because they know we're out there all alone. It's a very warming feeling to know that your boss is overhead you in an aircraft. And so the crew is on a cutter, and this boat is riding. I mean, we are in some seas, and I think our night limits are 5 and 7, 5 pitch, 7 roll. We have limits. And we were right at those limits. And coming off a cutter at night in rolling seas in an MH-65, it's a challenge. And so we came off that cutter and we flew 80 or 100 miles to this cruise ship in the darkest of dark. We're at like 500 feet. You can't see anything anywhere. It's like flying inside a cow. That's for the joke we always make. It's as dark as inside a cow. It is that dark. And so goggles don't produce. You can't see without ambient. Goggles amplify ambient light. If there's no light to amplify, there's no light. And so we are super dark, and we super launch heavy seas. Falcon is overhead, and we meet the cruise ship at the earliest point that we could meet them. And then the minute we get over the cruise ship, it's just like you said, there are 5,000 people with flash cameras flashing. And we've been on a cutter without cell coverage for weeks. And the minute we get over the cruise ship that's got Wi-Fi, everybody's phones in the aircraft are buzzing in your flight suit. I remember my phone was buzzing.
Oh, it's hilarious.
And we're low on fuel, and they've got these people at the end of the boat, the back of the boat, and we said, hey, we can't hoist them from there. We're going to have to hoist them from the front of the boat, from the bow, and there's a flag mast. They've got a flag up, a huge pole sticking up, and we're low on fuel always in the 65. We have calculated how much time we can do this. We have like 14 minutes. I'm like, we have 14 minutes to make this happen.
Wow.
And so they moved the patients, and there was one patient and there was two patients, and they moved them to the bow of the boat. I'm in the right seat doing the hoisting, and we pull into the front. We've asked the captain to please ask the crews, people on board, to stop flashing all these lights. And then we pull into a hover. Josh is in the left seat, and we don't have a swimmer on board because we don't take them on deployment. And so I've got a flight mech, so their nurse has to come with the patient. So now I'm counting. I got one, two, three hoists. I got at least two hoists here. So I've got down and up, down and up. I'm counting my evolutions. And we pull into
5 minutes per hoist. We're at like 15 minutes. That's 1 minute past, or like bingo. Oh, I'm calculating with you, Shay. Oh, game on.
Oh, we got at least 4 evolutions here, and we're out of time, and we're in the middle of nowhere. And so we pull into the hover, and I kid you not, on the left is a flag post. We're at like 50 feet. There's a flag post that's 8 feet away from the rotor blades that if we hit, we'll die. And then I'm looking into the cabin, and I'm looking into a dining facility. There are people in tuxes and sequin gowns drinking champagne and caviar as I look in 15 feet away. And if we hit them, we're all dead too. And so now we're doing this hoist of 2 people, and it should be an easy cruise ship hoist, and it is one of the most challenging. So we have to hold hover for 16 minutes between 2 obstacles that'll kill you in the middle of the ocean, 80 miles south of Cuba. And so litter down, litter packaged, no, basket down, nurse up, litter down, litter up. Yeah, and so they had to package, and I don't know if they packaged the patient or came up in a basket, but there's an evolution, and we finally got the 2 people. No, there were 2 people and a nurse. So now I'm talking 6 evolutions. There were 6 evolutions to get them all up, and we're counting, and we're out of gas, and we got to go. And I'm watching someone eating caviar off a cracker, and we get them in, and we go, and we're heading due north, basically to Cuba. So we've got to get into Guantanamo without getting killed. There is a very clear corridor into Gitmo because the rest of it's Cuba, and there are missile sites left and right of the corridor to get in. If you get lost, they'll shoot you down.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And so we're trying to coordinate, and I'm trying to get this guy directly to the hospital. and we get them to the hospital, and then come back and land. There's 2 airfields there, and the captain of the air station lands in a Falcon. Yeah, that's the case. And we rescue 2 people so others may live. And I will never sleep right again because of that. You're just, I have anxiety to this day because of this. That's what we do. Oh my gosh. That's what the Coast Guard does. This is what we do. And I remember going, there's a shack up there, and Josh Wine and I are still good friends. And, we're just looking at each other, and we're looking at our crew, we're looking at our flight mech, and you're just like, we're going to have to debrief. There's a lot to debrief, but I'm going to go call my wife behind the building and tell her that I love Jesus,
I love Jesus. I love you. It's good to hear your voice. Everything's good.
Everything's good. We just got a real case. I love Jesus. I love you. Tell our daughter I love her. She's an infant, and we just had a real case, and that's what that award is about.
Wow! Oh my gosh, Shay! Out of everything we've talked about so far, the greatest part about all this to me is like you cannot make this stuff up. You like people try to make up all these crazy cool scenarios. I'm like, you don't have to. Just call somebody in the Coast Guard. Be like, hey, what's a crazy weird thing you've been on? Let me tell you a story, and bam.
When you take the duty or you get on a deployment, anything can happen. You are on a train that can lead you to the most crazy places, and this is why military members and Coast Guard members are thanked for their service. This is why. This is why when you thank a military member for their service, they're like, I do remember that one time, and you're right. You can thank me. Someone shot at me. Someone tried to kill me. I nearly died. When you want to thank a Coast Guard member, they're like, yeah, there is that one time. I'll take that thing.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Oh gosh.
And we didn't know the people. We didn't know anything about those people. We just knew that they needed help. We evaluated the risk. We evaluated the gain, and we said there is more gain than risk, and our crew is willing to go. And that's what Coast Guard crews are doing every day in this amazing country we live in.
Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. Man, thank you so much for sharing just a piece of that. That's wow. Gosh. Yeah. Living on the edge.
Josh Wine will laugh when he sees this. I can still remember looking at his face and thinking, what did we just do? And,
I love it.
And the crew, we just ask a lot of our military members, our Coast Guard members. We ask a lot. People just say, honor, respect, devotion to duty. It means something. It means I got the watch. It means I'm willing to go. It means lock and load.
We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors. Ready Bar, originally made for astronauts, now designed for first responders and built for you. This high-performance meal bar provides complete nutrition without the sugar crash. A must-have for any helmet bag, swimmer bag, or everyday pack. Get yours today at getreadybar.com and use the promo code RESQ10 for 10% off. Ready Bar, zero crash, all fuel. Shay, thank you so much for sharing that. Just that one little deployment and how much goes on just there. Are there any other ones that kind of stand out to you while you were actually in Miami, like at the air station?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are good cases every day. There are some funny ones and there's some serious ones. I'll actually tell two quick ones. So a funny one that comes to mind in Miami is that it's a night case. We get a call. There's a vessel taking on water in Biscayne Bay. And so we launch out. It's dark. then Broward County Sheriff, they launch a helicopter too. And then a Coast Guard boat gets launched. And then I think a CBP boat gets launched. And then I think somebody else got launched. And so we're heading out. It's not very far. It's in Biscayne Bay. And there's Sea Tow, and they make money off of this. And they're out there launching. So we're all racing to this boat taking on water in Miami. And the Sea Tow guy gets on, and he comes on the radio, and they're like, everybody stand down. I got this case. And it's just this cavalry of rescue organizations in Miami that are all out there trying to rescue and make sure people are safe. But we got stood down. I can just remember the good cases in Miami. There are a lot of agencies out there, so they're few and far between. Miami's got a little bit more infrastructure on that than, say, New Orleans. But yeah, everybody stand down. I got this one.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So that's a funny one, a not funny one. And I feel like I need to talk about it because it's about immigration. So my next story, we're the Coast Guard. We guard the coast. And immigration is a huge conversation right now. There are people all across the world that want to live here. And there's certainly some compassion, quite a bit of compassion of the travels that those people make to try to get here. Now, I want to prevent you from coming in, but I also don't want you to die. So there's definitely compassion with the people that are trying to get into this country. And so one day, it's a day flight, we get a call, and they're like, hey, there's somebody in the water. And you get a lat long. And so what we think happened is that the smuggler thought they were going to get caught and kicked all the people in the water. So, or the boat sank. Oh my gosh. Or the boat sank, or whatever. We don't know the story, but there are 30 people in the water. And they're coming from the Bahamas somewhere. It's a day flight. We think they're Haitian. We don't know. And we get out there, and they're dead bodies floating in the water. And
oh man,
I've got a mental picture of a dead woman. They're black. They're all black. They're African American, and you can see them in the water. It's awful. And we find one alive. We find one alive on a red cooler, and hoist her and bring her back.
Wow.
And so this is, these are the challenging decisions that Coast Guard men and women have to make every day. You have no idea what you're launching on. There's a report of somebody in the water, and you go and you find multiple people in the water. You don't know how they got there. They're trying to get into the U.S. They're clearly migrants, and a lot of them perish. And we rescued one and brought her back. It's a hard mission for our members to do every day.
Man, I was never stationed in Miami, so I didn't deal with that at all. Alaska was one thing. You don't see a lot of immigration up in Alaska, and then Humboldt Bay, California, we're too far north from the border. We just didn't see a lot of that stuff like you guys do down there. It's interesting.
Quick story. So I did chase some go fast off the back of Coast Guard cutters. Yeah. Coming out of Havana, we would chase go fast and interdict them, stop them. They would stop. And it's kind of funny. Stop a boat full of migrants. This one's migrants, not drugs. And we stop them. And so how the sequence is the helicopter finds them, the small boat goes, gets them, the large boat comes to a stop, the helicopter lands, we land, and then the small boat that's got them comes back. And so I would sit on the fantail and hand out blankets to the migrants that we're bringing on board. And these were Cubans. And so I did this enough down in Miami that I can remember handing a blanket to a guy and he and I looking at each other and having handed him a blanket before, that he and I recognized each other, that this migrant,
What?
yeah, not the first time that he had been interdicted by the Coast Guard, and he and I looked at each other and I was like, you and I have met before. And he's like, yeah, that's how badly they want the country.
Wow. What a trip that is.
So certainly have seen and understand the plight to get into this country. It's an amazing country that we live in. I don't hold any ill will against anybody that wants to live here and fights to get here. If you're coming here illegally, I'm going to try to prevent you. But I don't, there's compassion involved with that.
Wow. Yeah, I wouldn't have expected that one. My goodness.
Yes. All right. What else you want to talk about?
All right, let's bring us into the. So you leave Miami and you end up going to ATC, which is Aviation Training Center in Mobile, Alabama. So now you're teaching the next generation, coming in at the basically kind of like flight school, but it's not quite flight school. It's a transition course. It's where you teach the Coast Guard pilots how to be a Coast Guard pilot, right?
That's exactly right.
Nice.
It is. It is nice, and there's a lot to it. So Aviation Training Center Mobile is an amazing place. It is where Coast Guard pilots are born. Pilots either go through Navy flight school or Army flight school in general, maybe Air Force flight school. But most Coast Guard pilots go through Navy flight school. They learn their basics in a fixed wing and then a helicopter, and then they learn how to be a Coast Guard pilot at Aviation Training Center Mobile. And so that's the same with Army pilots. So when I came from the Army, they sent me, and it's a full course. You can fail, you can flunk out. It's where you learn, it's flight school all over again, but now in your new Coast Guard environment. So you learn what it's like to be a Coast Guard aviator, and then you learn your aircraft. It was an amazing 4 years. So we did stand visits at air stations. I'd go to Air Station Kodiak and give a stand visit there for 2 weeks, which I did. That was part of the gig. And then we would do, the week-long proficiency courses that I talked about. We'd evaluate pilots that would come in for a week. And then we would train all the brand new pilots. So if a pilot came from Navy flight school or Army flight school, you get assigned to be an on-wing is what we call it. So you show up and I'm your instructor pilot, and I'd start you off. You could end up flying with other instructors, but I teach you the curriculum to become a Coast Guard MH-65 Dolphin helicopter pilot. It was pretty cool. And so becoming an instructor pilot for a pilot is a pretty big deal. Becoming an ATC Mobile pilot, instructor pilot, was a big deal for me. It was
awesome.
An 8-week course, and the 65 pilots eat their own. I mean, we were brutal. We would, at that time, the branch consisted, it was called the 65 branch, and it consisted of the smartest, most capable pilots in the Coast Guard. And just being in the room with these guys and gals was scary. I mean, these are just the people that write the flight manual, the people that write the policy, that if you had a question about an emergency procedure that you didn't understand, you would call the guy or gal that wrote that policy, wrote that emergency procedure. So being part of that crew was similar to being part of the New Orleans crew, a very unique group of pilots, the very best of pilots. I was definitely at my very top of my game as an instructor pilot there. When you get an upgrade, you go typically through an oral board. So you go through the syllabus, aircraft commander or instructor pilot, you go through the syllabus, and then you get an oral board. And so at the time we were doing oral boards on instructor pilots, mine was 5 hours.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
By 8 other pilots, and they would just crush you on aerodynamics and medical and procedures, emergency procedures, and aerodynamics, and judgment questions. And so they just go around the room and ask you questions till you couldn't take any more questions. Tell me everything you know about the theory of lift. Tell me you are out with a student and you have a flat tire. Now the aircraft is broken. Do you leave it on the runway? Do you move it off the runway? You're not allowed. You landed hard and damaged the aircraft, but now you're on the runway. Do you move it? Do you get it off? These types of questions, 5 hours, and this was fairly much a standard. You had to cater it. So you're the student wanting to be in an ATC instructor pilot, and you would cater it. So I brought tropical smoothie and smoothies and sandwiches so that these 6 or 8 guys could just destroy me and decide whether they were going to let me into their group or not.
Hey, if you don't know your stuff, can't help you. You better know your stuff if you want that position. Oh yeah.
I mean, I like that. And this wasn't just me. Again, this was anybody that decided they got orders there and decided they thought they could be an ATC MH-65 instructor pilot, went through this, and it was brutal. But you come out the other side and just a much better pilot.
Yeah, man, I really like that. Like I really do. I mean, it brings your knowledge and your what you need to do in order to teach the next guy to another level.
And so that's really part of that oral was, okay, give me a class on the hydraulic system. Go. And because that's what you would do, right? Give me a class on, explain FADEC to me. I don't understand FADEC. Full authority digital.
That's the brain, the computer system I know that.
Yeah, exactly. and so you're just, and in general, I mean, what they're going to cover in general, any system they want, any aerodynamics they want, any 3710 policy that they want, any emergency procedure that they want, and just grilled us until we were cooked. And then you carry that forward,
Beautiful. No, that's good stuff. I really like that.
And the best part about Aviation Training Center Mobile is that it's standardized training. And so it didn't matter whether you're left seat, right seat, what you're doing. And what this allowed was that when Katrina happens, is that I can get in the cockpit with a guy or gal from North Bend or from Miami or California, and we know the same exact thing. We have been taught the same exact thing. There is no interruption in service with me flying with a pilot from another unit. And that standardization is what makes the Coast Guard so exceptional, is that we are interchangeable with our swimmers, our flight mechs, and our pilots, and we're really good at it. And that standardization has to continue to be able to respond to surge operations like hurricanes. Yeah,
I'm totally on board. And out of everybody I've seen, especially this, as big as the Coast Guard is, but yet as small as it is, the standardization across the board is mind-blowing to me. Some of the best I've ever seen. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. All right, now I'm going to pull you out of ATC, Aviation Training Center. You go to headquarters for a hot minute, because every officer has to go to headquarters for at least one stint.
Whew. So in the Coast Guard, in the officer side, every officer has a detailer, and that detailer process, you give a dream sheet, they tell you it's not a viable dream sheet. You got to add some more. And so, you've got to put, to succeed in the Coast Guard as an officer, you have to do a stint. In general, you have to do a stint at headquarters. It gives you insight into the entire organization. You create the connections that'll last with you for a lifetime. You see how the whole organization works. I can remember getting the call, and it's really like this. Hey, Shay, you ready to know? The phone rings, and it's really just that quick. And you're like, yes. and you're hoping for something amazing. And he's like, hey, you're going to headquarters, you're going to 7-Eleven. And at the time, it was a ship helo. It was a small job. And I can just remember thinking, oh my God, because I'm at the top of my aviation game. And the last thing I want to do is come out of flying for 4 years. I'll be worthless after that. And so the first question is, it's called Diff Pro. And I was like, is this a Diff Pro job, which allows me to fly while at headquarters? And so it did. And so I got a Diff Pro position. Nice. I went to CG 711, Aviation Forces for the Coast Guard, where we wrote policy, and I ended up managing for the last 3.5 years, managing a fleet of 98 Coast Guard helicopters, roughly about $1.9 billion. We had the MH-65D, and we were transitioning the MH-65E. So every day I'm in meetings on working with ATC Mobile on standardization. I'm working with engineering on managing this process. Working with safety. I'm working with all different branches, all different directorates of Coast Guard headquarters to make this amazing helicopter keep flying. And so we had 98 of them. We wrote policy, 3710. So we wrote policy all the time. I was in charge of, finally, ATC Mobile created the flight manual, which is about 1,000 pages. And we would go through all the emergency procedures, and I got it signed off. It was like the greatest accomplishment ever to get a flight manual signed off. My name is still on the MH-65D flight manual, and it only cost me 4 years of my life. And, you know, it was a challenging assignment, and all the platforms are up there, all the airframes are up there, so every aircraft has an operations guy. So I was the ops guy, and it's got a engineering guy or gal, or it's got a safety. So everybody's kind of watching on it from different directorates. But yeah, that's what I did for 4 years.
Man, good for you. Holy smoke. That's that's a big task. Like, for those who don't know, that's a big task to rewrite an entire like flight manual. Ooh, that's a lot.
So ATC wrote it, and then I would sit with them, and we would codify it, and then I finally got it signed off. But that job over any other job, I didn't have a vacation. I didn't have a break. I took my leave, and I would take my laptop on leave with me, and I was accessible for 4 years. It was pretty grueling. And we wore trops, which is the blue tops and the polyester bottoms. It's not a cool flight suit. They wouldn't let you wear flight suits at headquarters. So there was one day a year that they would allow the pilots in the building at Coast Guard headquarters to wear flight suits, Oliver Stone Day. And so that was like the greatest day of the year, is when we get to wear our flight suits again up at headquarters. And it would have to get signed off. Permission had to get signed off. I think it may even been the commandant level, because
that's crazy. That's funny.
It was a big deal walking around headquarters in a flight suit. Nobody likes to see an aviator in a flight suit.
No, not unless you're on the flight line. But you know what? It brings up morale. So especially for us aviators.
Yes. And there's always, the surface fleet guys, the cutter guys are amazing guys and gals. That we have a huge surface fleet, and aviation and surface work together. They're on that same floor that I was on, operations, and 7 is CG7, which is operations, and they're doing the same thing on their side. But there's a good camaraderie between the aviation side and the surface side, definitely.
That's great to hear. Right on. All right, so now I'm going to pull you out of headquarters, and you go down to a very unique, different type of mission with the Coast Guard. So again, I was not too familiar with this, but you have some great stories to come out of this, because it's a little more law enforcement side, which is another unique side of the Coast Guard. But yeah, hit me. What is this all about?
Kind of the same thing we talked about earlier. You get the call from the detailer. I've worked for 4 years, been been working really hard at Coast Guard headquarters and TROPS every day. And there's this great job down in South Florida, in the Keys, and I really wanted it. And the detailer calls and says, "Hey, you're going to this organization." And so this is a Southcom. It's a COCOM job. These are military commands. Southcom is out of Miami, and this organization is one of the sub-commands of Southcom. And we targeted counter-narcotics organizations. And so
Wow.
for 3 years, that's what I did. I have to be very careful about what I say and guarded. I will just say that there is an amazing organization that's working every day to protect Americans from an onslaught of cocaine trying to reach our shores. That every day people want to bring cocaine into this country. In 2023, over 29,000 Americans were killed by cocaine. 29,000 people were killed by cocaine in 1 year, in just 1 year. And so this is an organization that prevents cocaine from reaching our shores for that very reason.
That's pretty cool. We will leave it at that.
Yes.
We don't have to. Yeah.
Yeah, some things are best left unsaid. Just know that there are hardworking military members, including Coast Guard, that are daily behind the scenes, without recognition, protecting our country.
Man, that is cool.
Yeah.
That's really good to know too. Like, like the kind of like secret squirrel stuff, but not too secret squirrel stuff. You're like, hey, there's stuff going on that's good. It's good. I can't tell you, but it's good.
There's organizations out there that are actively daily protecting Americans without recognition in general. That you can't just allow 1,000 keys of cocaine to come into our country.
Agreed.
Yeah. You just can't allow thousands and thousands of Americans to die due to cocaine. Literally in 2023, the 29,000 people died. That's 10 times the amount that died in 9/11. And so,
wow,
this is yeah.
I appreciate everybody doing that one.
It's a great honor to work for that organization.
So let's pull you out of that one then, and then bring you into your very last unit, your Twilight Tour in Clearwater, Florida.
Great organization. At this point in Clearwater, I'm a commander. I'm a deputy XO. I'm in the command cadre. It's all just about taking care of our Coast Guard members. So 500 members of Coast Guard and civilians at this air station. The missions that the younger pilots are doing is the same ones that I was doing, back in New Orleans. They're out there every day getting called out on bad cases in the middle of the night to do things that other people that don't do, and just, giving everything they have to keep our country safe, to rescuing people they don't know, that they don't know their country of origin, that they just go out and rescue. They're either in a helicopter or they're in a fixed-wing aircraft. For the 3 years that I was there, the air station responded to multiple hurricanes, rescued lots of people, and my biggest job was to make sure that our crews were ready and that we took care of our crews.
Nice. Did you personally have any of your own, because I know even as a commander, staying in that job, you were still standing duty, because That's what you guys do. And I have to give credit to not only you, but even as far as the commanding officer, our COs, they would stay on duty as well. And I know this because I flew missions with my commanding officers at every unit. Did you? Was that you? You were one of those guys?
So it was a bit challenging. So I went from flying the MH-65 to flying the MH-60. I will say that I did pull some duty. I wasn't a regular duty stander. My job is to take care of the people at the air station. But yeah, when a Thanksgiving duty comes up, it's always Thanksgiving was like my big one. I always took a Thanksgiving so somebody didn't have to have it. So I as a commander, I got to pick and choose some more than other people. But yes, the expectation was to stand duty. But it was really to take care of military members.
Right on. And I love how you just said you stood duty on Thanksgiving, because you did that as an ensign when you selected and directed into Thanksgiving duty. And now you did it as the officer in charge. You're like, I got my boys. I got my crews, and this is what's up. I got today.
My biggest job was in making sure, our crews were taken care of, that Thanksgiving they had food, Christmas, New Year's Eve, that our crews were best prepared for the missions that they were flying. So now I did deploy. We do deploy out at Air Station Clearwater. There's quite a bit of deployment, and deployments are always fun. Yes.
Awesome. Shay, we started with your very first flight and your very first rescue in the Army, then your very first rescue in the Coast Guard. Now you're doing your Twilight tour. Do you have your last rescue coming out?
So, I wish I had a really amazing upbeat story to tell you. They kind of started and ended the same. So it was on a deployment.
Oh, man.
I know. Another rough.
Shay?
So we're on deployment. I'm the co-pilot. The pilot is an exceptional pilot. We get launched out in the middle of the night. Guy having a heart attack. We're on one island down south, and we're going to another island. And he's an American citizen, and we're given everything we've got. And so it's a launch into the dark night over the ocean, 2-hour flight, and we get there, and he's not making it. We get him in the aircraft, and again they're doing CPR in the back, and we get him to Nassau. We fly him up there. We get him to a hospital, and you're sitting in an aircraft, and you can feel him. You can feel the aircraft moving as we're giving compressions to this guy to try to save this person's life. And, I can still just remember just sitting there feeling the aircraft bounce as we give compressions, trying everything we can to save this gentleman's life. Unfortunately, it was just too far, but that was my last case. We ask our crews to do a lot, and there's a personal toll that is taken on some of those, and you don't walk away from something like that without taking some of it with you. And so one of the most amazing things about Americans and about American military, about American Coast Guard, is our value of life. And I don't know that value for life is the same in other countries, but in this country, we will do anything we can to preserve life, especially for Americans and American military. This gentleman was American, but quite honestly, we didn't know that. We did know it on the way out, but it wouldn't have mattered. We'd have done the same regardless of what their country of origin was. But our value of life is so much that we're willing to send a crew of 4 out in the dark and stormy from one island to another to take to a third island so that this guy had a chance. And while he did not make it, that didn't mean that we didn't give everything we had to try to make sure to preserve that life. And so we as a crew fought for that that gentleman's life to the very end.
Yeah, that's cool. I am sorry I'm sorry for him, and I'm sorry that was your last call out. That's like, I was hoping for at least a little bit of like a higher note. I'm like legitimately sorry, Shay.
Let me think of a really good one. I mean, there were definitely a lot of cases where you go out and you do rescue them. Rescuing somebody in their worst of times is the most amazing feeling. It instills a sense of duty to others, to service, to this country. The best way, and I said it, to make yourself feel better is to take care of somebody else. And there were a lot of cases where, we did rescue. We did save somebody's life. We were there when they needed it.
It's pretty awesome. God, I love what we do. Shay, I gotta tell you, man, like out of listening to all your rescues and your entire career of some of the stuff you did, it's amazing to me of what stands out to us personally, right? So you get some good ones and you get some bad ones. And I legitimately I feel for you for the way it started and the way it ended, because I know in between there were so many good ones that get kind of brushed or behind us. They're like, oh, that was a good one. And it's not as impactful in our mind. So.
Absolutely. So I wish that we remembered the good as well as we remember the bad. For whatever reason, the human psyche, the human brain doesn't remember that way. And unfortunately, it's far easier or is laid down differently in a different place in your brain. The bad cases are. There were plenty of good cases. I did over 44 hoists in New Orleans outside of Katrina. So 44 times I pulled people up and were successful. We went out one time, tug, taking on water, hoisted them off, and did an amazing rescue. And for some reason, that is not laid in my brain the same place as, the bad cases, the ones that go wrong. Right. And so I wish that they were, but for whatever reason, the psyche remembers the bad. So I know what represents danger and what doesn't represent danger as I go forward. So if I'm like, that's not dangerous, then I'm not worried about it. I don't need to lay that down. But the bad cases, this is really what it comes down to about mental health and PTSD, how the brain works, and why we seem to perseverate, to think about constantly the bad ones, and instead of focusing on the 44 hoists that I did, that saved somebody's life, is remarkable why our brains don't think that way. So one night, me and another guy get called out on a case. We go out, and it's a lady that's having a heart attack on a cruise ship. It's a cruise ship rescue. And so the crew gets launched. We're in New Orleans, and we go out, and we hoist her. And again, we don't have enough fuel. So practice in New Orleans at that time was we would land on top of oil rigs, and we would take their fuel. And so for a while we had keys. We carried lock cutters with us, and we would clip open oil rig and take their fuel, and then call them and say, hey, we just clipped in.
Leave an IOU.
Little IOU.
From the Coast Guard, IOU, about 87 gallons.
I took 600 pounds of fuel, and I needed it. So myself and this other gentleman, this other pilot, Aaron Green, and I are coming back, and there's some illume. We got goggles, and we can see, and we're out, and we've got a patient in back that's struggling for her life, and we're going to an oil rig that has gas, and it's been coordinated, but there's nobody there, and we're going to have to do it. And we get there, and there are 3 oil rigs, and they're all in the same spot. I mean, they're within a quarter mile of each other. That long doesn't matter. There's nobody there, and we literally are like, eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Oh my gosh.
And one of them has fuel, and 2 of them don't. we're just like, we're just, and the lady, and so we pick one and we land, we pick the right one, for whatever reason.
Nice.
Some divine intervention, and we get gas and we take her back and rescue her. And so there is, how your religion fits into all of this, being a Christian, sometimes you do feel the hand, that somebody helped you out a little bit more. So there were a lot of good cases.
Well, that is good to hear. Again, an amazing career throughout this entire thing. Good cases, bad cases. I'm glad there are a couple in there that sit with you that are still either a little bit funny or just very memorable in a positive light. So, but 29.9 years in the military, retired out. And what did you do as soon as you got out? And then I do want to hear about the whole Congress thing.
Right. So I think I stayed as long as I did because I didn't want to retire. My fear of standing up and retirement. I think everybody that retires, that fear of retirement is so great. You just don't want to stand up there. You don't want to go through the retirement process. Standing up in front of people, not my strong suit. But push through and try to do it every day. I retired after 29.9 years, 1 month shy of 30 years. My retirement speech was about my mentors and my helpers. And so I had invited everybody that had ever helped me or helped me along the way or given me advice, people that had an impact. And having a career that long and being successful, you have to rely on so many people, your family, your wife, your daughter, your friends, your bosses, your confidants. It doesn't just happen. It took a lot of work for me to do 29.9 years. It was a glorious career that I am exceptionally proud of. So I retired, and then I joined the VA. I worked at Veterans Affairs. Nice. I wanted to continue service. I wanted to work with veterans. I think partly because of, my understanding of PTSD and depression, and it's just another way to serve. So I went to the VA for a year. I didn't have as much contact with veterans as I wanted, so I left the VA. And so then I joined the Pinellas County Veterans Association, and every day I'm working with veterans. There's no greater feeling than helping a veteran through their VA claims. It's a challenging process, and I enjoy it. There's a lot of gratification out of helping somebody through this process, the VA process. But this year annually we have a festival, Hero Fest. This is our second annual Hero Fest event, and it's all about promoting veterans and first responders in our local community. And I mean, it's great just acknowledging the veterans that we have and the service that they gave. And it's just part of what I do, is trying to take care of veterans. My name is out there. I get calls daily from a wide variety of reasons. I'm very tight with this veterans organization, and we're all very focused on supporting local veterans. We are working on a Purple Heart Park that will be part of the local community. We have a book where we interview veterans like you're interviewing me, and then they can QR code it. Their kids can hear their father or mother years later talk about their military service. So
that's cool.
Pretty cool.
What a great idea that is.
We do festivals. We're doing the Hero Fest again this year, and celebrating, the local veterans. Be about 6,000 people, raise some money, and then give that back to the community. That really is what people that were in the military. It's really worked for me. Working with veterans has really kind of been easy. It's a really good transition from taking care of Coast Guard members at the air station to to taking care of veterans here in the community. So it's about a life of service, you know, from lifeguard in high school to medevac pilot in the Army, to Coast Guard pilot serving others, to working with the VA, to working with veterans. It's a whole process of service that's leading me right towards running for Congress.
That's awesome. Minus the fact you missed one, sweeping the floors as the janitor. You missed that one.
Everybody's got to start somewhere. It's about
that's right.
You put one foot in front of the other. You're like, I want to be a Coast Guard pilot. And you're like, okay. And then you're like, start as a janitor and move up to a lifeguard, to enlisting in the Army, to going to Army flight school, all to get to Coast Guard pilot. It's a process. It doesn't just happen. It's about daily, weekly, monthly successes. It's about having short-term and long-term goals. It's about having a general desire that plays out into an occupation. It's about service to this country, service to your community. And right now, we live in a very challenging political times where good, strong military members, Coast Guard members should stand up and seek leadership positions in their community, even in the federal government as a congressman or congresswoman, that if you're not done, you should do something. And after being a Coast Guard helicopter pilot, you got to aim high to beat that. But it really is about taking care of the community, and all of this comes to a point. And running for Congress, running for any higher office, is about leaving it better than you found it. Like, we owe it to our children to give them a little more than we had. And I'm not sure that we're doing that. And we owe it to them. We owe it to them to try to leave it better than we found it. And I had a really good life. I've had a fantastic life and a great career. And I want to leave it a little bit better for my daughter. And I believe the way to that is through conservative policy that this country desperately needs.
Man, that's good stuff, man. Not finished. You are not done. There was done and retired, and then there's not done. And that's where you are. Yeah, buddy.
And I think a lot of military members come to that conclusion. You're like, oh, I'm going to retire. And you're like, no, I'm not. I mean, I'm broken and beaten and did 29.9 years. But it is about getting out there and doing what you can to improve the lives of the people around you and ensuring that there's a future for this country. And you have to believe in the values that have worked for us so far will work for us in the future. We owe it to our children that they live in a world where they can get a good job, buy a nice house, send their kids to a good school. We owe it to them. And that is, making sure that the American promise that was there for you is there for them. And we have to fight for this, and it takes fighting. There are a lot of things that are fighting against you. And conservative leadership, the values that we have, the Constitution, is a way that we need to ensure that this country succeeds.
Shay, this has been awesome. I cannot thank you enough for coming on and not only sharing just an amazing career, but what you're doing now. And I truly mean it when I say I wish you the best. I hope this helps. And I hope you're sitting in Congress and I get to shake your hand to the next congressman. That would be pretty cool. Pretty cool for me anyway.
Thank you. Yeah, I've definitely got some vision and solutions for the future, and I'm ready for it. I'm ready to fight for Tampa Bay residents and ready to fight for Americans in general.
Well, I appreciate that, man. That's going to be fantastic. Not done yet. Let's go.
Oh my goodness.
Shay, I cannot thank you enough for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing your entire career. Thank you so much. And I look forward to the day you and I get to sit down and like legitimately have a beer together.
I appreciate it, Jason. This was a good interview. I haven't told some of those stories in a long time. And one of the things about Coast Guard is we tell sea stories, you know, and it is part of who we are. And there I was, and this is what I did. And I haven't thought of some of those cases in a while. So I appreciate you making me go back through those and remember those days. They were extraordinary. We have some extraordinary men and women in the United States Coast Guard. It was an honor to be a part of that organization. And anytime you're here in town, Tampa Bay area, would absolutely love to have you over for a beer.
Well, thank you so much. I look forward to it. I'll talk to you soon. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here.
Go.
Now it's time for me to pull chocks and take off. But before I go, I'm always looking for the memorable rescues that people have done. If you have one that you're willing to share or know somebody who has a story, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to highlight it here at the Real ResQ. For everybody that is standing by for that SAR alarm, remember, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. So until next time, fly safe and swim hard. Hey Shay, real quick before I totally cut this out, is there a super funny training moment that has happened to you and throughout your career?
There have been quite a few. So we spend about 40% of our flight hours training. For the other 60%, we spend an enormous amount of time training so that our teams are well prepared to go out when it really matters. So out in New Orleans, when I was a junior pilot in the Coast Guard, but I had 8 years of experience before me, so I was looked at a little bit differently because I'm not a brand new nugget. I've got 1,500 hours of helicopter flight time. So a gentleman, I got a night syllabus flight. It's over Lake Pontchartrain, and so it's a helicopter. The MH-65 has got two sets of identical controls on either side of the helicopter, and so you go out in the daily rhythm. The training rhythm is to go out and make approaches to the water, make constant approaches to the water, make sure you can do that, and then you set up and you start doing some hoisting, usually to the boat first and then the swimmer later. And so I'm out with this pilot, and he and I are friends to this day. And at some point, I say, I feel feedback in the flight controls. And there's absolutely nothing more terrifying as pilots as to feel that there are flight control inputs going into the flight controls that you're not putting in there. And so I'm like, I got feedback in the flight controls, and so he and I are battling this aircraft that has some flight controls issues. And we finally land it at an airfield, and we get it on deck, and we're super thankful. And he says, "You have the controls." And in aviation, it goes like this: you have the controls, I have the controls, you have the controls. It's a three-way positive transfer of the flight controls. And he says, "You have the controls." And I said, "No, I already have the controls." And he said, "No, I have the controls." And I said, "Nope, I had the flight controls." He and I were flying against each other. And so we land on deck, and I can still hear him saying, "You have the flight controls." And I'm like, "Nope, I already got the flight controls." He's like, "No, I have the flight controls." And I'm like, "Nope, I'm pretty sure I had the flight controls." Great. And we both realized that we landed a perfectly good aircraft where we had thought that there was some flight control feedback because we weren't flying standard with each other. And I saw him not long ago, and we still fortunately laugh about it. But that's what it takes, is getting out there and getting that muscle memory every often, so that when the real world case comes, you're prepared.
That's awesome. So thank you for sharing that. That's funny.
I didn't tell his name because it was definitely a battle getting that aircraft back on the deck, and we realized it was all us.
Oh, that's awesome.